So, today we have with us Dr. Vinya, and who is now serving as the president of Sarvodia in Sri Lanka, which has been at this for like 6 decades now, right? So a pioneering organization and network and initiative. And also we have Karen Bali, who is a Hindu scholar. She's a magistrate. She's also an honorable member of the British Empire, and is a leader in the interfaith movement, but also in women's justice and empowerment. So we've got some, powerhouses of experience and wisdom here. So we'll begin with Sarvodia. And what I'd like to ask you there is that I understand you're building a road, and I hear Auroville's building a road too. And it'd be great to understand how this experience of building the road is also building consciousness, and because you've got an interesting motto there, and use that to speak to what is kind of the organizing essence of Sarvodia.
Thank you, Jeff. Venerable friends, it's a great honor for me to speak to you today, sharing the experience of the Sarvodaya Shramadana movement in Sri Lanka. Sarvodaya movement was born in 1958. I was born 4 years later, and my father was a 29-year-old school teacher, a science teacher, in a Buddhist high school in Sri Lanka. And Sri Lanka was 10 years after independence, just like India, from the British rule for 150 years. And there was this urge amongst the nation-loving, dedicated generation of leaders towards the transformation of our society, resurrecting the deep values that our society had, and trying to break from the clutches of colonialism. So this group of teachers and students from this school went to a very remote and impoverished village, which was also at that time socially ostracized as being belonging to a lower caste, and then started living in this village as an educational experiment, an extension of education, going out of the classroom, living with the people and trying to understand their situation, and also trying to fulfill some of their basic needs. Now, this generation of leaders were, of course, inspired by the Buddhist philosophy as well as the Gandhian philosophy and all the movements that were there also in India, like the Buddha movement. And so the word Sarvodaya, of course, came from Mahatma Gandhi, and he defined it as welfare of all. But the founder of this movement defined it as awakening, because the Sanskrit word is Sarvam Udayam, awakening of all. Udayam is awakening. And then also brought in the Buddhist values of sharing and caring, which is Shramadana. Shrama, of course, labor, Dana is sharing. But he broadened it to include not just Shrama or labor, but your love, your intellect, your resources, everything to share towards awakening of all. So a development philosophy evolved through action. They went from village to village, constructing roads. That's how the slogan, we build the road builds us, came into being. So the awakening process starts with the individual, we call Paurushodaya, then the family, the Kutumbodaya, then the community, rural community, Gramodaya, then the urban communities, Nagarodaya, then nation as a whole, Vishwodaya, and we need to awaken the whole world with this Vishwodaya. But the awakening has 6 dimensions. It starts with spiritual awakening, then extending it to our relationships, which we call moral awakening. Then we address the cultural roots of our awakening, the cultural awakening or cultural dimensions of social development. Then only we, based on that foundation, we enter social, economic, and political awakening. So it was an integrated philosophy, and the personality awakening starts, of course, with in a Buddhist setting, we use the Brahma Viharana or Satara Brahma Viharana, the four universal abodes, Metta, Karuna, Mudita, Upekka. But these teachings were given a very practical interpretation. Metta is not just loving kindness, Karuna is not just compassion, but loving kindness being translated into action is Karuna. So, compassionate action was taken as the practical side of these teachings. And then, of course, the personality develops when you get joy out of what you are doing. Metta, Karuna, Mudita, the altruistic joy that you get, and Upekka, that you stand the ups and downs of all this process. So a person who practices these principles can be awakening that person's personality, which we call Paurushodaya. And then the collective awakening is again derived from the Buddhist teachings, the Satara Sangraha, Vastu, Dana, Priyavachana, Artha, Charya, Samanatmata, sharing of everything that you have, and also pleasant language. Pleasant language is not being nice to each other, but also having thoughts and words that will be helpful to transform ourselves and transform our society, and engaged in constructive activity. Arthacharya, so road building is not just a physical road building which will give access to the village people to access government services, but also to sell their products and all the things that they would require, but also in the process building their lives by sharing whatever they have. They will host the people who come for these Shramadana camps from outside, and also that gives them an opportunity to be treating everyone equally. So that movement for 10 long years was a very organic movement of engaging young people in schools to others from the society, cutting across, and became a very popular grassroots development organization. Then the second and third decades, of course, they were really visionaries, the pioneers of the movement, saw the direction that the country was going. So wanted to institutionalize these programs that were going at the at the grassroots level, and village organizations in the form of Sarvodaya Shramadana societies emerged in the second and third decades, totally dependent on their own resources. There were no grants, no funding from outside, and also using the best of technology available at that time. So the use of appropriate technology, whether they were to construct roads or culverts or bridges, which are fulfilling the basic needs of the community, to agriculture, to environmental sanitation, and also child education. We introduced the early child development to Sri Lanka. At the time that the movement was born, there was no early child, even the concept of early child development wasn't there. The preschools or nurseries were confined to the cities where only the middle class could access. So the movement evolved, and then in the 80s and 90s, we experienced a terrible war in Sri Lanka, and this philosophy was acceptable to all communities. We have Sinhala and Tamil and Muslim and other communities in Sri Lanka, although the majority are Sinhalese and the Buddhists. But the conflict that lasted for 26 years in Sri Lanka really affected our work, but we were able to be at the front line of providing services to those who were affected by the war, at the same time really articulating a vision of national unity, reconciliation, peace. And the movement in the second and third decade were supported by donor organizations, and we had our own issues that you all are also dealing probably in your own organizations. How do you sustain a movement at the same time holding it together as an organization? So it was incorporated by an act of parliament, and though government has nothing to do with it, it's only the legal status we derive. We don't get any support from the government. No, the government has any direct control of what we are doing. Now, of course, things have changed a lot. They are trying to bring all kinds of legislations to restrict the space of the civil society organizations, social movements, because a lot of young people are very vocal and active, as you had heard probably 2022. We had protest movement which brought down the government that was there at that time. So today, after so many years and after also being dependent on, to some extent on donor money, we have created a full transformation of our organizational structure, and now we are serving more than 50, we have reached more than 15,000 villages with about 5,400 village-based independent societies which are following this philosophy and now trying to address the serious economic, social and political crisis that Sri Lanka is facing. So what is important is that this whole transformation process that we are aiming from the individual to the country to the world is going parallelly with our own inner transformation. And we are not like creating one or two pockets of intentional communities, but trying to transform the existing communities in whatever they are formed. They will listen or they'll visit and hear, see what these movements activities are, and then they would try to relate to them and start their own awakening process. And we have today, as Jeff mentioned, we are using also the information communication technology, and we have created, though the mother organization is there as the Sarvodaya Shramadana movement, there are more than 16 different legal entities that have been created, including a financial institution, which is the only financial institution in Sri Lanka owned by village societies and by a charitable organization. But we are struggling because the macroeconomy and the capitalist system that prevails in our country, the market economy, all that is not at all conducive to village-based, community-based empowerment process, which creates an alternative economy which is based on satisfying people's needs, not on wants or greed. So this is a challenge. They are bringing up all kinds of regulations, to even mobilizing village savings, encouraging people to save money and have their own credit schemes, and also have financial instruments that will really liberate them from the exploitative systems of finance and banks. And so we are having a very big challenge now, but we are introducing a concept which has of course been always a part of Sarvodaya, which is called Artha Dharma. Artha is Arthika, Dharma is, of course, values and, value-based economics. So we are trying to then introduce these new modalities based on the information communication technology, so that people can access information and also be able to mobilize themselves, share their experience. And finally, it's the education that is very important, the transformative education. So the experiential learning from the 1950s, Sarvodaya has been a movement which was really using development education as a powerful tool to transform individuals and societies. It has evolved. Of course, the times have changed now. People don't have much time to volunteer, although the volunteer spirit is very much retained. The same way that Mata Mandir was built through volunteer efforts, we are still mobilizing volunteers. If you ask me what is the main source of income or what's the main source of mobilizing resources, it's volunteer labor, volunteer contributions, in-kind contributions, supplemented by our own generation of income and also donor funding. So to conclude, we are living in a world which is very challenging now. New challenges are there. The impact of climate change, for example, has not been there at the same level maybe when our movement was founded 30, 40 years ago. Aspirations of youth, which comprise about 25% of our population, are quite different. How can they relate to movements like this? But Sarvodaya has been able to really sustain and evolve itself to be relevant to the needs of the community. I think that is very important. And of course, the challenges of a movement being led by a charismatic leader and now having a distributed leadership with the vision and the philosophy as the uniting force, and with different people from different professions relating to different organizational structures in a matrix is a bit complex, but we have been quite successful so far. Our main challenge right now is really the governance, that is the governance of the country. The democratic space has been weakened, shrunk, and they don't want communities and community-based organizations, civil society organizations to be really in the front line of dealing with issues related to economics, relating to social empowerment. So the state wants to have a lot of control, but we are engaging with the state as well in positive things that will help people. That engagement is a principal engagement, but we see this year, 2024, as a very challenging year for social movements and civil society organizations. That's where we need to learn from the experience of other organizations, including the organizations and movements that you all lead. And we are a learning organization, always a learning organization, and we try to also share our own experience that will help and also create a network of hope for the future of this world. And that is why I'm very deeply honored to be able to participate in this, and looking forward to learning more from you and also sharing our experience and working together to make this world a better place to live for ourselves as well as for our children. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you. And thank you for your willingness to pick up the mantle of your dad and that incredible legacy. So you can see why it's so important for these organizations to collaborate, particularly the ones that have been around a while. Some of them are similar challenges, some of them are different, but we need each other. So Karen, you served as the board chair of the Global Trustees for the United Religions Initiative for 12 of its 25 years or something like that, so a long time. And United Religions Initiative, otherwise known as URI, that's a perfect organization. They don't go through any struggles or anything like that, do they?
Well, thank you, Jeff. Greetings, everyone. It's wonderful to be here. Let me just give you some context. We'll talk a lot about conflict. Over 80% of the world's population identify themselves as following a faith, spiritual expression, a faith tradition, or an indigenous tradition. That's a huge amount. And within those body of people, there are shared values: compassion, mutual respect, understanding, non-violence. So if we're all practicing as we preach and following all the values that we subscribe to, then Jeff, you said the world is on fire. Why is the world on fire? And is it time for us to introspect as to why we are not part of the solution? So we clearly have a problem. We clearly have an issue around us. We have climate change. We have so much violence. We have multiple issues where the faith communities, the spiritual community have the ability to make a difference, to try and eradicate that problem. But there is something about organizing ourselves, and I'll come on to governance structures as well. So faith-based organizations, you would imagine, all the nice things, the nice values of kindness and equality and equity. Of course, there's problems in any organization, and indeed the faith community as well. And the reason for that is, whilst we all subscribe to the good things, there's something about our actions speaking louder than words. So we may stand together and hold hands, and we may read out a charter, and we may talk about the principles of love, and the whole world is one family. But are our actions actually reflecting those words? That's the real issue here. Are we practicing as we preach? Okay, so what we have is models of governance, and this could relate to the situation here. In many faith organizations, there are models of governance where there's a chairman and a governing body. Okay, so oversee the management team and the CEO. So the CEO will then continue to implement the strategy of the governing body. Within that should work well, but within that there can be many flaws, and it's all down to human nature. And one of the biggest things is ego and power and territorial, it's my territory, that kind of thing. There are a number of issues which are coming from people within that structure. And that's why we're seeing a lot of the problems. So when we start talking about efficient models of governance, we need to really think about our own behaviors and how they reflect the values that we say that we actually subscribe to when we gather collectively. Ego has no place, but it's there. It's just a reality. There's competition. We talk a lot about gender equality, and I know there's a lot of work to be done with women and, empowering them. But we see a lot of women in competition with one another. And I guess the women need to ask themselves, are we support mechanisms for each other? Are we helping one another? Or are we like the crabs who pull each other down because we don't want another lady or another woman to reach that position before us? We see a lot of that, and especially in the faith sector. So something is just not right. Yeah. So where is the equality? Where is the equity? And where is the mutual respect? But there's something that we have on the grassroots which works really well, and I'll share that with you. And those are cooperation circles. So cooperation circles are groups of 7 or above individuals who follow a minimum of 3 different traditions. Now, those could be religions, spiritual expressions, indigenous traditions. And they come together to work on common action, because action is important. Yeah, and as we said before, it's great to talk about things, but it's the action that really makes the difference, and the impact is important, and how we measure that impact. So we have cooperation circles from 7 members up to 7,000 members. And those are all working together within their own structure to make a difference, be it in the field of climate action, non-violence, animal protection, women's empowerment, advocacy, conflict resolution, and really doing a good job at the grassroots level. But in order for them to be effective, we need to engage with the other levels. So the civic level, for example, we need to engage with policymakers. We need to engage with the government to make a difference as well. It's all interlinked. And so therefore, a silo approach may not be as effective today, given the breadth of problems that we're seeing. We need to start working in partnership. We can only work in partnership when we get our own house in order. And I think that's where the challenge is. So we get our own house in order by revisiting why we are there. Yeah, we have a principle, we have a charter. Why did we subscribe to this? And are we still following that? And if we're not, maybe it's time to do something a little bit different. If we're not able to stand by the truth that we subscribe to. But if we are, how are we making a difference, and how are we part of the solution? And it's all about solutions now. We know there's problems, but we need to move towards solutions. And I've seen this happen in a lot of organizations. And that process of consultation, thinking, brainstorming takes a long time. It takes a very long time. It's good, but at some point we have to move to the next step. And I think sometimes we get bogged down with the talking, which is easy, it's easy. But the doing is the hard part, and that's what we'll be measured on. Once we've had those discussions, it's important to have a strategy to move on. And this is where the ego part comes in, because we have external funders, for example. They provide the money, so in effect they want to say in what happens. Yeah, so you have your governing body, you have foundations, you have external funding, you may have a government influence. How do you bring all those together without conflict? Now, conflict is good. It's good. It helps us to iron out issues, but we need to be able to resolve it as well, or manage it, in fact, even if it's not resolved, just to manage it, to make sure we're actually able to make progress. Because the worst thing that can happen is an organization is stuck in a rut, basically, because it's not able to make decisions due to governance issues. So we see a lot of that. And one of the ways forward is, again, revisiting ourselves and our own ego and how we utilize that in a public space. We see a lot of people who are very spiritual and great leaders, especially in the faith community, but some of them carry a huge ego with them. And sometimes that doesn't set off the right message. I've seen a lot. How do you engage with that person? How can you talk to that person when there's an ego hanging over them? It creates a barrier. So that's an important thing. We have to break that ego cycle. We revisit ourselves, and then we think about working for the community, and that's the ripple effect, okay? So if we are genuinely releasing any form of ego or any kind of ambition, we will work towards the community. There's another thing that I just want to say, and I'll just touch on the use of technology to help us. We talked a lot about the importance of technology, and it's great, fabulous, but there's so many barriers and challenges with that as well. One of the things is our youth are becoming overpowered by smartphones. Many of us here, how long does it take before we need to check our smartphones? And in 2012, Microsoft study said that the average attention span of humans is 8.25 seconds. Let me tell you that the attention span of a goldfish is 9 seconds. So even a goldfish is able to maintain that attention longer than human beings. And a lot of this is down to our use of technology, getting involved into smartphones, which again, it has positives and negatives. But what we're seeing is we're losing the youth in terms of our congregational stuff. We had lovely kirtans yesterday. Youth are not able to maintain that level of attention within that. They could find that a little bit, it's all about quick fixes, isn't it? A little bit boring. They won't get involved in the storytelling of the scriptures. So we're losing that a lot. Okay? So there's a big problem there. And that's what we need to work on, as well as our own internal structures. How are we engaging with youth? How are we engaging with partners? And then I'll just say another thing. The technology is quite interesting, really. Some of you may have used Amazon Alexa. Anybody come across Alexa? Yeah, Jeff, you've used Alexa? Basically, Alexa uses a tool which, just tell her what to do. Put this on, do this. And it's all brilliant. You can ask her to put the lights on. But what message are we sending out? Well, it's a female, by the way. And it's only just recently they may have introduced a male. It's a female, and we're just telling her what to do. Do this, do that. And what impression are we sending? Through technology. We've got to be careful at every stage what it is we're doing and what our children maybe are listening to. And if I just keep telling Alexa, as a female, keep doing what I want her to keep doing, I'm sure that's not the best message. So there's just a few things I've covered there. I'm sure there'll be the more we need to look at. But in conclusion, I would just like to say, we start by introspecting with ourselves. Why are we part of that organization? Are we true to our own faith? Are we living and practicing the values that we talk about? And if we are, then let's be part of the solution. Governance issues, they can be resolved. All it needs is, removal of ego, a little bit of subscription to the charter again, and ways forward, where we work in cooperation. And I think that's the key.
That's a lot covered. You both covered a lot of ground. We'll come back to some of it. One of the things I want to ask you, Vinya, is that over the course of the years of the movement of Sarvodaya, talk about crisis points: a civil war, a tsunami, a global pandemic. So speak to how the movement, the organizers, dealt with these monumental crisis challenges.
Yes, Jeff. So over the years, we built infrastructure. Actually, that infrastructure evolved. Now, everything that Sarvodaya you could see as organizational form evolved out of practice. Even some of the frameworks, for example, we have what we call a village graduation process, 5-stage village development process, which evolved from our own experience. What happens initially is what we call psychological infrastructure building. That is a change in the consciousness in the community, particularly at the time when we started the movement. It was like a mentality that the government has to do everything. Government has to provide all the services. But what's our own power? There's a lot that we can do as individuals and communities with the resources we have. So starting a dialogue with the building confidence of the people, then organizing them, that itself will not just lead to satisfying the basic needs in a village or a community. You have to guide them. So organizing the youth, organizing the women, organizing farmers in a systematic way is the second step. Then the third step only is the formation of a community organization, which will then do kind of mapping and the needs of the villagers. What are the things that they can fulfill with their own efforts? What would they require from outside in order to fulfill these? We came up with what we call 10 basic human needs. I'm not going to details of that, but then only we start with the economic activities. Only when there is a strong spiritual, moral, and social foundation that we start economic activities in the form of encouraging people to start saving and then start credit programs, then income generation activities and so on, until they reach what we call a Gram Swaraj, village self-governance level. So these village communities were evolving in the second, third, and fourth decades of the movement. So any time when there is a crisis, they could, we are the only organization other than the intelligence services and the army and the police, which can reach any household in Sri Lanka within 3 to 5 hours, door to door. And that evolved, there are volunteers who can be mobilized, and we use mobile technology. We have addressable messaging system if there's a localized disaster emerging. That's how we use the alerts. Of course, we are not authorized by the government to give any alerts on disasters, but once the disaster alert is given, we are free to distribute. And we are also using, sometimes we get the alert on, say, a possible tsunami even before the government announces. So that way we are able to build an infrastructure. So that infrastructure also consists of district centers throughout the country. There are 25 districts in Sri Lanka. So in addition to the village network, supporting structure has evolved, which is which are the district centers. Then in addition, we have an educational center network, about 12, where residential facilities are provided for village leaders or any. Now we are also training government officers, private sector workers, in those centers. So this infrastructure was always available when there was a national calamity. Of course, the war was a very different national calamity. It's a human-induced. We don't use the word man-made, although the war is actually man-made, not women-made. Women are the victims, and the women suffer. So during the time of the war, we could use this same infrastructure to engage in dialogue, promote non-violence, and conflict resolution, all that. And we were respected by both sides. The LTT as well as the government respected our work, so we were able to continue even though some areas were not accessible even to other organizations. So other than the ICRC, only few organizations could operate in these areas. So it's because of the neutrality that we have maintained, the reputation, and also the work that we had done before the war started. And some of these young people who are militants went to Sarvodaya preschools, right? So they knew Sarvodaya. Sarvodaya is not something that is outside to them. So we could always have a channel of communication to protect the civilians from the atrocities of war. So that was one reason. Then also when the tsunami happened, again the same story. Although it's only the coastal belt was affected, the adjoining districts, adjoining communities which were not affected could respond very, very quickly. So when the COVID came, of course, it was a very different kind of disaster where we could not put our own workers at risk because then they will also be exposed. But we were able to get special permission. That's where me as a public health practitioner was leading, was part of the state response as well, mobilizing communities and use of again the technology to give messages, then using our religious leaders, the network of temples, kovils, and the mosques. We were able to provide the messages of how to protect yourself and also run some of these intermediate care centers. All we were able to do because we built that infrastructure and the trust. Trust element is so important because there's a lot of misinformation going on. So when you build a collective trust, okay, when they say that, this is a reliable information, we accept. So some of the most, there was like a controversial issue in Sri Lanka during the COVID time, the burial of bodies of those who died due to COVID, and the burial was not allowed. Even for the Muslim community, only cremation was allowed, and it was not scientific at all. And even those of us who were speaking against, even from the medical community, were branded as traitors and not nationalists. And so we had to deal with such very sensitive issues as well. But we were not scared because we knew that we had that credibility and we could speak up. So in the times of disaster, we have an advantage, and also we are now working in partnership with other organizations. One of the weaknesses of big organizations is that they think that we are big and we don't have to work with other organizations. We were able to network. Now we know there are certain areas where Sarvodaya doesn't have the expertise. We don't have the expertise to go and challenge laws in the Supreme Court. But we are working with organizations which have that expertise. Just last week, there was a government and civil society initiative called Open Government Partnership. I'm just giving an example. And we were working together. And the government brought a bill which was so oppressive. It's called the Online Safety Bill, to protect children and women, but it has nothing to do with protecting children and women. It is to protect the political establishment from anybody criticizing them, exposing their corruption. So we said we are walking out. And now again this morning, there was a big article and putting the photographs of myself and the Transparency International head in Sri Lanka saying that they pulled out and now there's a backlash. But it doesn't matter because we have to stand on our principles. So the times of calamities we are responding, but there are slow disasters that are happening. There is our land being grabbed by corporates for expanding their own economic profit-making ventures. How do you counter those? How do you protect the communities? So it's actually a challenging time where we need to identify the potential threats to the kind of vision that we are trying to achieve through the communities and have a fairer world, equitable world, and then trying to, where necessary, engage with the state and other organizations, but at the same time guarding our own principles as organizations which believe in holistic development.
Well, some of the recurring themes that I've heard is the importance of the engagement of youth. How do you do it? Technology, the role of technology. It's a wonderful servant, but it's a tyrant of a master. So how does it serve us? The importance of the engagement of women in leadership roles. The importance of practice. The inner work is part of the outer change. These are essential, I think, common threads of what you're sharing that both point to the solution and the problem. I want to share something with you on the side of technology, because, AI is the big buzz, right? Everything's, everybody's thinking about playing with AI, right? And I am too. I'm exploring it. I'm very interested in technology and how it can be designed and engineered for cultural and evolutionary and spiritual transformation. And so I'm experimenting with different tools, different platforms. And one of them is called PI, and it stands for personal intelligence as opposed to artificial intelligence. And I was communicating with it about this. And I said, well, I'm going to be meeting with both of you. And what are some of the common threads, the common ground? And this is what it said. You might be interested in how much Pi knows about you and what you're doing. It says, both Vinya and Karen are deeply committed to improving their communities and promoting social justice. They may have different approaches, one through Sarvodia's community-led development, the other through interfaith dialogue, but their ultimate goals of making positive impact and change are similar. Both of them involved in organizations that promote harmony and understanding among different groups. For Vinya, it's about bridging communities within Sri Lanka. For Karen, it's about fostering interfaith understanding. They also share a strong connection to their respective spiritual traditions, Buddhism and Hinduism. They both seem to integrate their spiritual beliefs into their community work, which could provide an interesting point of comparison and discussion during the panel. How does that sound?
I think you know more about me than I know about myself. Scary, though.
Well, it's scary on one hand, but part of the thing that's happening with AI in particular, AI and technology in particular, is that we're approaching it with the same mindset and patterns in the past. Everybody's running their own play. I'm going to create this for what I'm doing. I'm going to do this for what I'm doing. And it's nothing wrong with that. But there's an opportunity here when we think about this conference, why are we here? And what is the crisis of the day? We're faced by two extinction-level events, both man-made, both require human solutions. So the stakes are high, really high. And the interesting thing, though, is that because this interconnectedness, and when we look at the new sciences, so many of the new sciences, the new physics, neuroscience, contemplative science, the modern evolutionary science, many of these new sciences are pointing at something very similar. We're interconnected. We're interdependent on not only on the social level, on the global level, on the universal level. And so the question that I have, and I want to plant a seed at this conference, something to consider, is wouldn't it be wonderful if these pioneering communities, these communities of practice, these evolutionary communities, cooperated together to co-design not an artificial intelligence engine, but an evolutionary intelligence engine, something that we could all use, something that we could put our collective experience, our collective wisdom, practices, principles into, and then share them across the field, and then use them. Because if the communities are utilizing it and interacting with it, then that's more and more information that's going to be shared with the collective. And it's something that should be shared with everyone, owned by no one. It could potentially be a gift to the world, a tremendous gift to the world, and a way to use and integrate not only digital technology, but spiritual technology, social technology, cultural technology, and wisdom and experience. So I want to plant that seed here, because one of the things that's so important is when we gather together like this, we have to manifest something that has impact. Because we can't just keep, there's talking and sharing information and ideas are wonderful. But what from this gathering can manifest into something that is impactful?
I think the information sharing is important, but we need to be cautious as well in terms of misinformation and disinformation, because a lot of the issues arise from those two strands. So, like I said, it's a double-edged sword. It's great to share, but it's got to be carefully managed, I think. With regards to what could manifest, I think, first of all, we're all here as people of a particular spiritual expression, of faith. I think we need to see a lot more women first in leadership, because I think they're part of the solution. I know in religious leadership, we talk a lot about equality and women's empowerment, but we don't see the numbers at the top. We usually see the male leaders, which is not a bad thing, but we need some more female voices to help be part of that discussion, the solution, and to be able to help lead some of the conflict resolution. So I think that's the first thing. In terms of where we go from here, it's important that we try and bring our particular skills to try and help move things along. We can play a role amongst the journey of conflict resolution. We might not get there till the end, but I think there's something special that we all bring here, be it from our particular diverse backgrounds. Diversity is great. There's always going to be room for it. I think we just need to be able to listen more, but listen on a level playing field. If there's going to be hierarchical structures, that sometimes poses a problem. And so therefore, I would just like to say that we can get rid of any kind of barriers. Let's ensure that we're able to put our voice forward, project our voice. And I'll just conclude by saying that, to summarize this link between our spiritual inner self and what we offer to the community, very simply, that theism should not be interpreted as meism. Rather, theism should be interpreted as weism. And I think just following that construct, it would help us to be part of a bigger family a bigger a solution, working together in what the key word is, and that's cooperation.
Just to add to that, I think the challenge is how do we use particularly the advancing technologies which are now exponentially advancing and you can't keep pace with it. And I mean, at a very basic level, the smartphone, a few years back, the tendency, the parents were very worried that their children were misusing the smartphone. And then COVID came and smartphone became a necessity where, even the education and all that. Now, how do you get the users to use social media to technology in a constructive, positive way? One way is to deny them from access. Now, we said no, it should not be the solution. So we have amongst the separate legal, national level legal bodies of Sarvodaya is what you call Sarvodaya Fusion. You can just Google and fusion.lk. So there we are trying to encourage young people, even children, to use technology, particularly the internet and social media, in a responsible way and in a way that will help them to even build their personality. So it is a tool, and then we have a program with the approval of the Education Ministry Department. IT Yahamaga, Information Technology, positive path. Yaha is something good. Maga is the road. So how do you use these tools? So, and there are programs that we have developed, and there's a lot of confidence now amongst the children, the teachers, as well as the parents in those schools where we are doing the program. However, I must admit that despite all these efforts, the dominant forces are trying to use and influence the youth and the children in a very negative way to get them to be consumers of various things, including, drugs, to tobacco, alcohol, all that. So I think there has to be, on one hand, strong education, and from a public health point of view, I say social immunization. We know biological immunization against diseases, against organisms. But are we immunizing our children socially so that they can protect themselves from all the negative influences that are coming? I think that's possible, but at the same time, I think these corporates which are promoting these tools in a very negative way, they should also really look at themselves and see what are the possible misuse of these technologies, and also have some form of safeguards from science itself, because we know extremes can be prevented with self-constraint and all that. That is where I think they should come together. And we know that, for example, in the financial sector now, there is a huge dialogue on this exploitation of community. So they have a concept called good banking now. Which are, so same way, can the technological companies come together and really look at what's happening in the world, the misuse of these technologies, and have also dialogue with social movements and come up with solutions. We are in engagement now in Sri Lanka. When this happened, COVID happened in 2020-21, and this particular incident of certain communities being branded as sources of spread of COVID using Facebook. And we had serious dialogue with Meta. And then they have this trusted partner, model. And we expanded, helped them to, got them to expand that model so that you could detect any, unacceptable posting early and take action. So I think there are solutions. I don't think the solution is really to ban any of these things like what our government is now trying to do, restrict, but it has to be a society-wide effort, interdisciplinary effort to address this issue so that we can get the best of technological advancement.
Well, I am looking forward to the discussion groups on this because there's a lot of stuff to chew on here. Karen, Dr. Vinya, thank you so much for sharing your experience and your insights, and I hope that we're able to distill and mine them into something that's actionable.
Can I invite Jeff, Kiran, and Dr. Vinya to come onto the stage? So, between Rahul and Devin, who is willing to jump onto the stage? I think Rahul has an engagement, so Rahul, would you like to go ahead?
Okay. So the objective of the harvest was to come up with commitment or action points for the self, that is one, and second, for the collective. We started with having an open discussion where some of the people in the group shared. And as we were nearing the convergence, we discussed how in the challenging times of conflict, one can cope with the challenging times. So that's where some interesting insights have emerged. That during conflicts, our shadows, they come up to the surface. So one has to deal with the shadows. And another important point that emerged as an action for self is the first point of the Auroville Charter. The end of which says that one has to be a willing servitor of the divine consciousness. So what is this divine consciousness, and how can one be a willing servitor of that? So we felt that that has to be a very important self-individual action point for everyone, that on a day-to-day basis, we need to come back to that and live that. So that involves a continuous work on the self. That is the sadhana one has to do. And then when we were looking at what can we do for the collective, what emerged from our discussion was we need to start living as a collective. One of the points that came out was Auroville has several communities, maybe 70, 80 of them, and each of them can be a mini Auroville in itself. Can everyone in that community come together and live as a collective? So what does it mean to live as a collective? So some suggestions that came up were, maybe we do some activities together, maybe we eat together, have some sharings together, or we meditate together. And another very beautiful point that came was, somehow we kept coming back to the Auroville Charter as the foundation and the first point especially. So what if, as a collective, every week, maybe once a week, we could come and read the Charter and reflect on how we were living it on a day-to-day basis. So another point that came was the aspect of Shramdan, the aspect of seva or service. So maybe we can offer 1 hour of work to the community. And I was sharing that how Matri Mandir was built earlier, and at that time people had the opportunity to participate in its construction. And a couple of days back when I was just jogging, this idea came to me that now the lake is being built and there are big earth movers that are building it. But maybe I can go and participate and do my bit. It will be very small, but maybe a few hours in a week I can go and participate. Because yes, Sri Aurobindo and the Mother really said that one needs to apply the sadhana into the physical. And it's very important. So as a personal commitment, I'm starting with at least 1 hour in a week. I will go and give seva in the construction of Matri Mandir Lake. That is my personal commitment. Yeah, that's broadly it. Anything else that anyone in the group would like to add? Okay, over to, yes?
There was a mention, God in Judgment's name, that everybody works for 1 hour a day with the soil.
Right, so that was the part of Shramdan, that everyone works 1 hour a day with the soil, maybe in farms or maybe in any other way that they can. Yeah. Yes, thank you. Over to Devin. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so
We had a deeply enriching conversation, very deep dialogue. It began with a question that started that how do we awaken the inner flame? Because in Auroville context, some people would have come to maybe work in the forest or urban architecture, and there may be an outward reason that may have pulled them, but underneath that, there is a soul's calling. And how do we kind of bring the core of Auroville, which is the work of transforming consciousness, which is kind of the inner work, how do we bring that? How do we rekindle that? And yeah, beautiful notes taken by Riddhi. Yeah, and there was also perspective shared that how can we make opportunities to awaken this flame at various levels. For somebody, saving a tree or planting a tree is a spiritual act. Picking trash from an ocean can be a sacred, spiritual act. So how do we create spaces where this awakening can happen at multiple levels? It was also quite like even what Rahul shares, that eat together, work together, which ought to be like a basic thing in a community living. No, why are we even saying we need to do that in a way? So that kind of brought us to some reality check where the youth feel that it's not that the elders are lonely, even the youth are feeling lonely, and we are maybe just distracting ourselves with social media. So how can we create more spaces where the wisdom of the elders and the youth can come together and felt held, and there was kind of a surprise shared by those who come from the outside about the absence of rituals or spaces where you rekindle this kind of flame on an almost daily basis collectively, and which in a way is kind of in Auroville the design is that there need not be one ritual for all. So that is the freedom given, that each person, each micro community within Auroville can decide their own ways to come together and rekindle, but it can also become that can then go in the background and only outer work happens and inner rekindling doesn't happen. So that was a nice reality check and coming together on that, and many youth offered their time, and elders also offered their time to say we need to come together to do that. And there was also this mention of the role of human aspiration and the divine descent. I think a lot of people felt more faith in the power of divine and divine descent than the humans, but that also was pointed should not be taken as a way to escape or to kind of use, oh, divine will do everything, and so there was some interesting conversation around the role of human aspiration and divine descent both, and I'll invite Riddhi to share a few more points.
I think we began at the conversation of intelligence and how, in order for us to be able to work at the collective level, individually, what gaps or challenges people were experiencing. And one of the things that kept coming up as a recurring theme was how there are processes in place for newcomers and as well as for conversations and dialogue, but still there are gaps, there's loneliness. Also people in Auroville and in other communities who hold the life energy of that community, the reason, the purpose, the passion that the community exists for, have held fort for so long that there's exhaustion. And it's really important to replenish that space with relationships. The importance of feminine energy came in, the importance of rituals was mentioned, but also in our group, very similar to the other group, the importance to deal with shadows and give space to them was brought up. And there were offerings made by people who were passing through Auroville or here for short durations to hold space for that, for all those shadows. And also the wave council method was offered. So we've had some emergence of solutions come in through the discussion. I think that's about it. Thank you.
Anything else anybody wants to add? Okay.
It seems quite the starting point again, but I think it's also been well thought out and well shared. Any closing statements from the three of you all? One or two lines from each before we go on for a lunch break.
Well, the thing I'll say is that what I've just heard makes my heart leap, because these things are actionable, they're tangible, and if they can be actioned and embodied, transformation will happen. And if you do have another summit next year and we can follow up on what has happened and we can keep track of it, this is something that's valuable to Auroville, but this is valuable to the world, the work that you do here and how you get through this narrow place. Thank you so much.
Two things struck me. One thing was the openness to really bring out the real issues. People were not being polite. I mean, they really, and also, and the multi-generational dialogue. I think we have probably 5 generations here. And it was so fascinating and inspiring to listen to the, so that's the first part of it, the openness, the dialogue between several generations. The second point is that everyone was not complaining. They want to be a part of the solution and coming up with ideas. So those two things really struck me. Thank you.
Just a couple of points from me. I think the charter, fundamental to this whole process, it's not just a piece of paper, it's a living thing. So it's not about getting it off a shelf, blowing off the dust. It's about ensuring it's attuned to your day-to-day activities. I think that's absolutely key in this going forward. I think compromise is a good way to move forward as well. I know many of us have ideas and actions, and how do we bring them together and then form some kind of cooperative compromise? I think that's key. And finally, I would just like to say, as the Mahatma Gandhi said, we must be the change that we wish to see. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And what was so beautiful was to see the session actually coming alive in the group itself, like whether it is 5 generational, sitting with an openness, willing to listen, willing to share, willing to be part of the solution, and also coming up with something small and attainable goals which will help to build. It's not about aiming for the moon. The moon is going to be the guiding light, which for us at Auroville is the charter and the dreams, but it's also to see how do we make it as an inclusive. And what was heartening to see was the voice of the youth, the voice of people who wish to be part of this as an inclusive process and are finding their way, and how do we make that, right? So one is the old and the settled, which gives the structure. The new that comes in that says, okay, you got to make the structure a little bit flexible, move it, accommodate, and take us along. We are not saying that the old needs to be dispensed with and only the new needs to come in, but it's also about the harmony in which we're saying, hey, can we both give and take? Because times are changing. We are bringing in something. You have the gifts of lived experience. And I love the word, what you talked about, cooperative compromise. And compromise, the word itself has so many meanings. But if you could just sit with that word and the energy of it without feeling like, you know, what Riddhi brought, the shadow. The shadow of compromise means a whole lot. But to really look at it from a very level of that, it's needed. And it's not that I'm a victim or a martyr and I'm helpless or hopeless, but that it is needed in the here and the now for things to move, which means I may have to let go of something. I may have to adopt and embrace something. And at the same time, I might have to be patient for the unknown that is seeded, but to emerge. So sometimes I may need to give that space, which is a lot of, you know, a work on the inside. And it was interesting that today morning we had a very small meeting. And when somebody tells, which side are you on? I love this phrase. It says, I'm not on either side, I'm inside, right? And I think that's been a beautiful way from where we started yesterday, where we are talking about individual sadhana and how when I'm working on the inside, I'm also holding space for the inside of the other to come together, right? It's nothing is outside of us. So thank you so much for those deliberations. It's just a starting. It's like one little drop in the whole ocean, which we are really working together. It was beautiful to watch. And lunch is waiting for us. We have an hour for lunch. and have your conversations due, because I've invited Dawood to come and perform for us once again in just a small, intimate circle of us.
ما گدایان که در خراباتیم، ما گدایان که در خراباتیم، باده نوشانه صافی ذاتیم ای دوست، باده نوشانه صافی ذاتیم، باده نوشانه صافی ذاتی. ما گدایان که در خراباتیم، باده نوشان صافی ذاتیم، ما گدایان که در خراباتیم، باده نوشان صافی ذاتیم. نور علی مدد، 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 نور علی مدد. ما گدایان که در خراباتیم، باده نوشان صافی ذاتیم، نور علی مدد، نور علی مدد، نور علی مدد. بی خودیم از شراب بیرنگی، بی خودیم از شراب بیرنگی، وجه حرام سالم راتیم، وجه حرام سالم راتیم. نور علی مدد، 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 نور علی مدد. ایمان اهل دعا بارادیم، مال اهل دعا بارادیم، دم فرو بسته از مناجاتیم، دم فرو بسته از مناجاتیم، دم فرو بسته از مناجاتیم. نور علی مدد، نور علی مدد، نور علی مدد، نور علی مدد، علی مدد هو نور علی مدد نور علی مدد فانی از خویش و فارغ از قیدیم فانی از خویش و فارغ از قیدیم نگرفتار زرق و طاماتیم نگرفتار زرق و طاماتیم نور علی مدد 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 هو نور علی مدد 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 نور علی مدد. Thank you so much. So.
Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram
من مست و تو دیوانه من مست و تو دیوانه ما را که برد خانه ما را که برد خانه
Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram
صد بار تو را گفتم صد بار تو را گفتم کم زن دو سه پیمانه کم زن دو سه پیمانه
Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram
من مست و تو دیوانه
Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram
ما را که برد خانه
Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram
صد بار تو را گفتم
Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram
کم زن دو سه پیمانه
Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram
من مست و تو دیوانه
Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram
من مست و تو دیوانه
Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram
ما را که برد خانه
Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram
من مست و تو دیوانه
Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram
ما را که برد خانه
Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram
صد بار تو را گفتم
Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram
کم زن دو سه پیمانه
Jai Jai Ram
پیمانه
Jai Jai
پیمانه
Ram Jai Jai
پیمانه
Ram
پیمانه صد بار تو را گفتم کم زن دو سه پیمانه
Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram
من مست و تو دیوانه
Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram
ما را که برد خانه
Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram
صد بار تو را گفتم
Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram
کم زن دو سه پیمانه
Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram
من مست و تو دیوانه
Shri Ram Jaya Jaya Ram
ما را که برد خانه
Jaya Jaya Ram
پیمانه
Jaya Jaya Ram
دیوانه
Jaya Jaya Ram
پیمانه جانا به خراباتای تا لذت جان بینی ما را که برد خانه ما را که برد خانه ما را که برد خانه جیا جیا پیمانه در شهر و یکی کس را هوشیار نمی بینم در شهر و یکی کس را هوشیار نمی بینم هر یک بتر از یک دیگر شوریده و دیوانه هر یک بتر از یک دیگر شوریده و دیوانه
Shri Ram Jaya Jaya Ram
من مست و تو دیوانه
Jaya Ram
دیوانه
Jaya Jaya Ram
پیمانه 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 Thank you. Yes.
Second one is a Hebrew psalm that says, "We are all brothers and sisters." It's just a repetition again.
The poem that I was singing was again about Rumi's very famous poem. I am drunk, you are insane. Who's gonna take us home? How many times I have asked you, don't drink too much. My God.
Manayim Shivtakim Gam Yakha Hine Mato Manayim Shivtakim Gam Yakha Hine Mato Manayim Hine Mato Manayim Shivtakim Gam Yakha Inimato Manayim Shivtakim Gam Yakha
بود تا نقش جسم و جان بود تا نقش جسم و جان زنم حق حق هو زنم حق حق هو
Shivtakim Gam Yakha Hinemato Manayim Shivtakim Gam Yakha Hinemato Manayim Hinemato Manayim
خیرتمند در خدا جوید خیرتمند در خدا جوید حدیث نفس خود گوید آی من از چشم خیرت پنهان زنم حق حق کنم هو زنم حق حق کنم هو
vipakim gam yaka inimadu manayima inimadu manayim
Thank you. More? One more? Yeah. تویی دلدار من تویی گلزار من تویی غمخوار من تویی گلزار من تویی گلزار من مدد یا پیر مدد مدد یا پیر مدد مدد یا پیر مدد مدد یا پیر مدد تویی دلدار من تویی گلزار من تویی دلدار من تویی گلزار من تویی اسرار من تویی غمخوار من تویی اسرار من مدد یا پیر مدد مدد یا پیر مدد مدد یا پیر مدد مدد یا پیر مدد منم آواره منم دیوانه منم آواره منم دیوانه منم مردانت منم پروانت منم افسانه مدد یا پیر مدد مدد یا پیر مدد مدد یا پیر مدد مدد یا پیر مدد توی جانان من توی سامان من توی جانان من توی سامان من توی خاگان من توی جانان من توی افسانه ام او مدد یا پیر مدد 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 هو حقا هو حقا هو حقا هو حقا Repeat after me. هو حقا 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 هو حقا Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay. Take a moment of silence, please. And really integrate this. The soulful music from his heart that moves people, unites people, and in a way sets the context for our next session, which is bringing in the evolution of consciousness through education. We have schools, we have colleges, we have universities, but we need the education is of the heart. And thank you so much for this. So, the session is the session is led by Daniel. Over to you, Daniel.
Thank you, Sudha, and very deep gratefulness for having this session after this incredibly beautiful, moving offering. Thank you, Devod and Ridi, for, I don't know if they rehearsed, but that was so much heartfelt. And this is what we want to connect this conversation that we're just beginning. We want to explore the role of education into everything that we have been discussing until now. And I would like to offer an expansion and not only limit the conversation around education. I like more the concept of learning. And they don't have to be in competition. I just feel that learning widens the purpose for education. So that's part of what we want to explore. Originally, by merit, by respect, and by the wisdom, I was inviting Dr. Ananda to begin sharing about in his humbleness and wisdom, and he feels that we should begin talking our session. He invited me, being a facilitator, to begin. So it's actually, this is a very shared facilitation. So I want to initiate the conversation by offering the idea that we have a big opportunity as humans, as communities that are seeking to evolve, as groups that are trying to unite into a higher purpose. And I want to offer the invitation that there is a great teacher that we might not have been listening enough. And it's one of the teachers that is most available to us and probably has some of the greatest wisdom that we need at this moment, or any moment actually, in our human journey, and it's Mother Nature. So I want to start with the idea that Mother Nature is one of our great teachers. And this could be understood in many levels, philosophically, mystically, but also very practically. I come from the Americas. Abdi Ayala, the name that most indigenous communities are understanding to be the real name of the continent. And in most of the peoples of the Americas, there is a very clear understanding that human societies have to learn from the teachings of nature in order to organize themselves. That's one of the most basic, essential, guiding living principles throughout the whole Americas. And I understand that in many, many other places of the world, but I feel that the Americas, if there's one thing that unites most of the people, is this, and especially in South America, is this concept of Pachamama, that is not only a teacher, it's a loving teacher. It's a great wisdom. And it goes into levels of very sophistication. So many of the indigenous people have developed technologies to connect, to access the wisdom of Mother Earth. I have the blessings to share, especially with the people of the Sierra Nevada of Colombia, who are, I believe, the quantum physicists of nature communication. I mean, the level of sophistication that they possess is beyond understanding, what they can access. And I just want to offer this as the beginning, and then something very practical, more recent, I will say, because this can have adaptations to our human systems. In Peru, one of the countries that has offered this concept of Pachamama, there has been born a project that is something called like Mother Earth as the teacher in the classroom. So it's basically a very concrete project in which schools officially declare Mother Earth to be a teacher. And they have to do an official session with all the teachers where they declare Mother Earth to be their new teacher. And then that's like the first step. Then they have to build a garden. And that school garden becomes a classroom. So it's a very beautiful how this very ancient indigenous teaching, it's taking shape in more modern institutional settings. Yeah, we will have more to share. I would like to invite Georgia, that she comes also from a very ancient wisdom that a good part of the humanity have benefit from Greece. And there are new wisdoms being explored and to be shared.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you. Listening to you, it makes my heart full. And it reminded me of my beloved philosophers in ancient Greece, the pre-Socratic, who were out in nature, who create science by just being out. A science that still we are exploring. And then it came Aristotle, a later philosopher, who also made a great influence to the world by bringing natural environment, observation. And actually it came to me, he's saying that if there is one way better than another, make sure that this way is the nature way. So this is the way for me and for my people, colleagues in Greece, that we feel that we can touch the heart of the child, the heart of a human being. And I'm here to share about way of counsel, a way that can really be a pedagogy way, can really deepen our relations, our inner work, which is so essential, individual work, and the collective awareness in such an amazing way that it's beyond words for me, beyond really thinking. But I will like to continue our discussion and see what it comes.
Well, I'm happy to be in this company because all the things that you have spoken, well, just initiated, we have to discuss a lot more. I'm happy to share with you that since the beginning days of Auroville, I've been one of the first pioneers here in Auroville education, long back in '71, when the aspiration school had just started. So the mother had given us the message, and it was inaugurated on the 17th of August 1971, I think, if I'm not too wrong. And she had sent us the message of the 3 languages of Auroville. I think in your previous session of Sanskrit, somebody might have told you that Sanskrit is the national language, English is the international language, and Tamil. So we had concentrated on the languages, English, Sanskrit, and Tamil. However, my idea is not to tell that. In our question-answer sessions which will follow this discussion, I'll tell you a lot more things in detail. But the basic thing is what he has spoken about the mother nature being the teacher. Well, that is a concept, a belief reality. But with us here in Pondicherry, the mother, whom you see here, was literally our teacher. And she was one of those persons who was very much close, not contact, but much more. She could communicate with nature very easily, very spontaneously. When she was in Paris as a young woman, She went to the Paris Zoo and she could communicate with the lions and the tigers and the animals there. Or even the birds. Even the squirrels, when she was sitting at Bois de Boulogne or something, the squirrels would come to her, she could communicate. So she practiced and realized this communication with nature, with trees and birds and animals. And when she came to Pondicherry, she could contact each flower. And she has given meaning of hundreds of flowers, not the botanical name that all of us know. But she caught, as she's told us, that she caught the inner vibration and aspiration of each flower. One would be a mental sincerity, the other would be honesty, the other would be surrender, one would be love for the divine. So it's not that all roses are same. Each rose has its own meaning and shade of meaning. So she had a direct contact with these flowers. And in fact, these flowers have become now source of flower remedies. So you see, it's not just giving a spiritual meaning, but they become part of remedies. In fact, somewhere here close by, I know a doctor who is practicing flower remedies. So this is one of the very close contacts. And here all of us know about the banyan tree in Auroville, near Matri Mandir. The banyan tree itself was a very live contact with the mother. In fact, she chose Auroville, the center of Auroville, to be the banyan tree. And long back, when the Matri Mandir was not even there, when they were deciding where should be the Matri Mandir, what should be the center of Matri Mandir, the banyan tree was one side of the line. And on 21st February 1971, when the sunrise came, so that was the line. She said, on this line will be the Matri Mandir. So you see, the banyan tree played a very immense role in the concept, conceiving of Auroville. And on 28th of February 1968, when the inauguration ceremony took place, before that there was a lot of cleaning up that was being done. And one gardener, in his absent-mindedness, at the end of the day, put an axe in the trunk of the tree and left for the night. A lot of the villagers do that, put a knife on the trunk of the tree and then leave. And that trunk, when the axe was put on the trunk, that banyan tree, the one that you'll see here, I don't know if you've already seen it or not, it went to the mother. Mother was living in Pondicherry at that time. She complained, saying, "Mother, I'm getting hurt, I'm bleeding. Somebody has put an axe in me. Please get it removed." So the mother immediately contacted the gardener here in Auroville, asked him to run and pluck away the axe. So when you're saying mother was the nature teacher, here this mother of Pondicherry, of Auroville, she had that living contact. And one more beautiful thing, on the day of inauguration, 28th of February 1968, there was a beautiful big ceremony. You might have seen the photographs. And then one photographer from a newspaper journal, he came and took a photograph of the banyan tree. And next day he printed it in the newspaper. It may be Indian Express or Hindu, I don't know which paper. And somebody noted very clearly the mother's image in the tree. And then it was sent to the mother. "Mother, is this your image or is it just an imagination?" She said, "No, I was there physically, almost in the subtle physically." So the tree captured the image of the mother. So that was the identity she had with the tree. So this place is alive with the mother's presence. So the banyan tree is that wonderful example of the contact with the mother. So, sir, what you're saying is not a symbol for us, it is a reality. How the mother, and then when she was young in Japan, she had a small little garden, and when she went into the garden in the morning to pluck some vegetables for the morning lunch, it seems some of the plants said, "Mother, pluck me, mother, take me, I want to be taken." So that was the live contact. It's not an imagination. She has narrated all this in her own story, saying, "This is my contact." So she would go and pluck that vegetable because that vegetable says, I want to offer myself this morning. So you see, with the mother, education, Mother Nature was not just a part of education, it was a part of a spiritual reality. It is not a concept, it is not a belief, but it is a spiritual reality, because in our philosophy, Hindu philosophy, we say Mother Nature is the Shakti, is the feminine aspect of the divine. So the divine he or the divine she, they're both equal. So for us, Prakriti and Purusha are equal and one. So we do not see them as teachers or as gurus, but as a very divine aspect. That's where the mother has given an immense importance in part of the education, which I'll tell you much more as we go along. I think if I take away the one stance, I can speak for the 45 minutes. So I told my friend that don't ask me to speak too much, because I can speak too much about Auroville, because I've been in Auroville since the beginning of beginnings. So that's a long, long story. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ananda, for sharing, being a witness. I feel this is such a blessing to that you can speak from that vivid experience with the mother. I want to invite Georgia to share a little bit about more of the way of counsel and how does that relate to the conversations we have been having so far.
Thank you, Daniel. So I heard the word communication. I heard the word communication with beings, not only with human. And way of counsel is a way actually to do it, to practice it, to be with it, to live it. And it's a tradition. There are many traditions of circles, and way of counsel is one of these traditions that I am deeply connected and deeply serving in my country and where I have been asked. We have 3 elders that they honored this way, and they tried to bring to the world. We have Gigi Coyle, we have Jack Zickerman, and we have Hopkins, I don't remember his first name. They have been given a lot. They created the Ojai Foundation in California. And we have Joe Provisor, who is a head of the council in schools. The website is circleways.org, and there are free online international gatherings about this way, where people can really go and see the work. I encourage fully to connect with him. So it's very strange for me to talk about wave of counsel, because when I want to introduce that, I usually bring the experience. So I will try my best. So it's for sure we need to have a clear opening and a clear ending that creates the experience even more powerful. And that creates a structure, a sacred structure, the container. It can happen in a school, it can happen in an organization, it can happen between myself, inner way of counsel, or it can happen between 2 people. It can be a way of living. The more we practice, the more it becomes a way of being and interconnecting. And I will explain a little bit of the methodology as much as possible in words. So it's this clear beginning, clear ending, and there is a clear time for dedications. To what do I dedicate this meeting? So I dedicate to children. I dedicate to new conscience that Mother was talking about. And people are welcomed to dedicate, so to bring really our energy in the center and in our circle. Always remember, though, that there is an empty chair here. There is empty chair to welcome everyone that we feel should be in this circle. So I invite an empty circle, so you can invite whoever you would like to be with us here today. And it can be not necessarily human. It can be every being. And that's where the beautiful practice of witness comes in way of counsel. Because when we end our process, we may have witness outside sitting, or we may have people from the circle witness. And these people, we invite them to come from a point beyond of human consciousness. Not necessarily. Sometimes we say witness the context, witness, but how would a tree witness our process? How would a bird witness our process? So we invite this consciousness because we know that when we have this conscious added to our conscious, then we will feel complete. Then we will feel whole. We know that then we will feel safe. For myself, I'm talking. And there are different forms. They are not only circle. Circle is just the base that we create in order to really stand and explore further. So depending on what issue we want to communicate, we want to explore, we have different forms. We call it forms. It can be homocentric circles. For example, because in way of counsel, we bring our stories. And it's this consciousness that derives from the stories that it's so powerful. There is no yes and no. There is something else. There is this space that can create on its own, that we create, and it can create on its own. So I would like to share very briefly a story of the first time I was in this form of homocentric circles. It was a women and men council. So we were in the big circle, and whoever felt like either a man or woman would go in the pillow circle that was inside. So a woman felt without knowing. That's very important in way of counsel. We step into the unknown, into what is alive right now. So that woman felt this, and she sat. Then other women sat, and there was immediately formed a circle of men outside and a circle of women inside. And my experience after this circle was that there is no gender. There is just humans. And that was a very great for me, deep understanding. And then we have another form, the spiral form, where we put some pillows, 3, 4, 5 pillows, and then we have the outer circle, and we invite 5 people to sit in. And we share in a spiral form. That means when the first person finishes and the second person speaks, then the second finishes, then the first one can go, and another one who is inspired by heart to come will sit there, and the weaving of the spiral will go on and on until we feel when there is complete the energy. So that's just a few forms that I could describe with words. And I just want to share that this we bring into schools. We bring it everywhere, but I am mainly bringing in schools because I have seen that's the best way to touch the child's heart. And for me, that's education that can bring evolution. Because when I can touch the heart of the child, then my heart is touched as well. And we can grow together. We can grow together. I can learn from the child, and the child can learn from me. So, I want to continue the discussion just to say one more thing, important thing for me, is that there are many alternative educational systems. So my task is to go to the worst system, to the conservative educational system in Greece, and to support the teachers to leave it, because it has to come from the teachers who are the authority in a good way. We have a very beautiful word in Greek, exousia, that means authority, and it means derives from the essence. So we go to the teachers and we support them to live this way and then to bring once a week, and it brings miracles. Miracles in a way that we remember what it means to be human. That's the miracle for me and for my colleagues. And I want to continue. Sorry for the time.
Thank you, Georgia. You don't have to be sorry. It was very valuable. Thank you for sharing the method. Actually, I almost felt tempted to see ourselves in a spiral. It also feels very connected to the Auroville architectural model. And what you have mentioned about connecting with the essence of the learners, with the heart, I would like to invite Dr. Ananda to share with us a bit more about the educational approach that especially Sri Aurobindo explored, and I know it has a very deep wisdom to share regarding what is the essence of education, what are we trying to reach at?
Yeah, okay. Well, yes, speaking about Sri Aurobindo's main idea of education is, first of all, as you rightly started off saying, but we have a different language, Sri Aurobindo would say we have to treat the human child as a soul in evolution. The important word here is in evolution. It's not just a heart or a being or a psychic being or a soul. Of course, this has been the ancient Indian tradition to consider the human being not just consisting of mind, body, and life and emotions. We have very clear distinction between the outer being and the inner being. The outer being is mind, emotions, and the body. The inner being, which we call the soul or the Atman, or the mother says is the psychic being. There are two different beings in the human personality. The outer is only an instrument of the inner. So it's very easy to discriminate this in an education. Sri Aurobindo would tell us you have to do everything to manifest, to give expression to the inner being. Now, so the entire system of education becomes, what are we going to do to help the inner being or the psychic being to express itself? Now, if, for example, you are a carpenter, if you want to make a good table, you need sharp instruments, a beautiful saw, a chisel, a screwdriver, and all that. So if the instruments are not good and not in condition, you may be the best of carpenters, but you cannot express what you have imagined the table to be. Similarly, in education also we have to help the child to perfect the instrumentation. That means the mind must develop its faculties like observation, imagination, concentration, etc., etc. The emotions also have to be sharpened, be sensitive, open to beauty, aesthetics, joy, delight, compassion, love. That's the emotional perfection. And the body also has to be given the right attitude, right exercises, right perfection. We should not neglect the body saying, oh, it's my instrument, so I leave it. Body is not just an instrument of the mind and the vital and the mental. It has its own individuality. So what Sri Aurobindo and the mother, they tell us, is perfect the instrumentation so that the inner being can express itself more and more perfectly in this world. Because philosophically, the purpose of each one of us sitting in this hall or outside this hall is that we have come upon earth for a special and a specific experience. We have not come upon earth to have our own family, our children, our property, our name and fame. That is a passing thing, a temporary thing. But the real purpose is the soul, the psychic being says, I'm going to go this time in this human body, in this place, in this country, for experiencing a certain thing. And you see, even we feel we are richer after getting lots of experiences. So experiencing this world is important even for the soul. So education is only a beginning of this experience in which the teacher, the parents, the society should help the child to experience. But in this, one of the important things that Sri Aurobindo and the mother have told us is that the child should be given the freedom to choose for himself. That is why this system is called the free progress system. It is not a teaching, it is not a pakka syllabus, it is not an examination, nothing. But the child is given an environment and the possibility of choosing his subject, choosing his teacher, choosing his timetable. Because you see, in a class there may be 20 people, 20 children. But each child is different. We think all the 20 children, all of you sit here, lesson number 4, all of you take over and take out your notebooks and write this lesson. This is all monotonous. The children are not robots. So Sri Aurobindo said, the child is a soul in evolution. Why he has come in this birth, child alone knows. As a child, he may not know. Because once the child, the soul comes into this body, there is a kind of a forgetfulness why it has come. To revive its memory of the purpose, it requires the help of the education, of the family, of the society. So you see, in Sri Aurobindo and the mother, the entire system is called, that is why, integral education, because we are not neglecting Prakriti or nature or outside or society or nation even. So it's a very comprehensive system, but at the same time it is not education that could be given in the classrooms. That is why Auroville has got that beautiful quote, there is a lifelong education. So education is not what you learn in the schools, what you have been initiated. But learning is a process that happens all through one's life. If that is the expansive, Auroville has taken up that ideal. It's not a classroom teaching, it is not examination. All that we are doing now, it may not be the ideal. It is not the ideal, I know, because I've been into Auroville education, as I told you, right from day one. I was in aspiration school, I was helping that. But that, in the beginning, when something new begins, you have to take over something of the past. You cannot just cut off and say, hey, we are new. The past has to be inculcated, brought in, and then slowly transformed. So Auroville will take a long time, perhaps, to transform, change the old into the new. But we cannot be radical to cut off from the past, because after all, the past also has a great culture. The Greeks had a great culture. You have the great philosophers, Plato, Socrates, Aristotle, the Americans, the Indians. So there's a tremendous amount of tradition. So we cannot neglect our tradition. We cannot do away with our tradition. We have to take from the tradition what can be brought into the present and to the future. That is where lies the magnetism of the teacher. He has to understand well how to integrate tradition with modernity, how to integrate past with the AI technology. So this is one of the challenges in front of the present education, and Auroville is a wonderful place for that. because it is the harbor of the past and the future. Yes, sir. Sorry.
Again, you don't have to be sorry. Thank you. Thank you for sharing the wisdom. And also, he may not have said it completely explicit, but you are very much in part responsible of some of the experiments of this education approach that is so deep and with such incredible potential. And also not, I offer my honoring because of manifesting something so difficult into reality. As anyone that has worked with the education system knows, that's one of the most resistant systems that humans have created for change. So that's remarkable. We have very few minutes before we move into the break and the groups. I feel to open for, we have time for maybe one question. So if there's any burning, yes.
I'll just be very short. That way of counsel is also inspired by your talk about the difference and how we connect soul with knowledge. This is very important in the classroom. So way of counsel can also be a pedagogy. And a very concrete example is that we teach literature, we take the text, we read. In a very conservative school, we don't need the alternative necessarily. And then we ask, what stays with you? And we keep a note of this. And then we go deeper, because what stayed to each individual creates this wisdom of the classroom and the diversity, which is so much important for the dynamic of the group and for the knowledge, for the children really to deepen into that particular literature, text and poem. Sorry, I just wanted to bring this because usually we think that the circle is a sharing circle with emotions, feelings. No, it can be a pedagogy also. Thank you.
Thank you, Georgia. If there is anyone that feels a burning question, we have like one question time. So is anyone feeling to share this? Anyone, you know, we're going to have the space in the groups for that anyway. So I want to, in the 2 minutes that we have left, Sudha is going to invite us to go into a break and then resume into the groups. I have an invitation for each one of us, and is to take some moments when we are in the break and connect with nature, with openness. Try to see if there is anything from nature that is wanting to tell you something. For example, something that happens to us when we were having lunch. And this is something that if you are aware, you will see that it happens all the time. We were actually talking about how to have this conversation that we just have right now. And exactly when we finished, I mean, the moment we were like, okay, ready, we got it, we know what we want to share, a butterfly came in, and it fly above each. There were another person, Marty was also in the group. So the butterfly came to each one of, very quickly, but it came to each one of us, and then went. And we all, because it was so synergistic at so in the moment, that the four of us were like staring at each other like, okay, this is it. We felt like Mother Nature was saying like, yes, I approve. I approve. This is it. You got it. You got it. So if you become aware, and this is the way of something that I have learned from the Native Americans and the peoples from the Americas, that nature is always teaching, always. Nothing happens that doesn't have a meaning. So it's up to us to learn how to understand that language. And there is always a teaching. And as Dr. Ananda said, nature is not above or below. Nature is another aspect of the divinity. And I personally like to work a lot with nature, with learners, because I feel there is a bridge that is very accessible to anyone. And that's a bridge that for many people is very useful to access the divine. Some people doesn't have to use that bridge. Some people have the gift of connecting directly with divine wisdom. But many, many people do appreciate this guidance from nature. So the last thing I want to share is just, because I like to also take the space to, I want to show this as the main teaching technology of the Americas. And this has been a very diverted from its original purpose. So I'm just giving you one of the secrets of the indigenous people of the Americas. This is tobacco. Tobacco is the key, the main key that pretty much all indigenous communities have to open the inner gates of wisdom of nature. So the tobacco is the door opener of the wisdom, is the great protector. And why indigenous communities smoked when they did, because they not always did, was because they knew that whatever you were intentioning while smoking was accessing directly the divine. Tobacco was a tool, a technology from nature to help us, assist us, guide us, and the consciousness of the tobacco. So this is the male teacher. The tobacco is the male energy technology of the people. So so just wanted to bring some of the tools that I have learned from the indigenous peoples and the great learnings that we have in nature. Thank you, Dr. Ananda, for the great sharings, the experience. Thank you, Georgia. And we look forward for a very enriching conversation. Thank you.
Do we have one question?
Yeah, you can come.
Thank you so much for your sharing. So it's a subject that really resonates with me. I have a question for you, which has a huge impact on how children are educated and even adults, on the assumption that there is this gate that opens with nature, or let's say, for example, of the mother, maybe an inner ability or capacity to communicate with nature, with other intelligence. Let's say, for example, in my case, it's the inner knowing that the human consciousness and intelligence is one intelligence among many others on that planet, and really not the most evolved or intelligent compared to others, but yet still important and loved. So let's say there is this connection and gate to nature. My question is, would you recommend, for example, in a group or a community, that any responsibilities, whether public or private, one of the conditions would be to have this gate open, and that it would not be possible to access a function of responsibilities without that gate open. What is your opinion or view on that, please? Is it clear? Or?
Yeah, I'm just going to briefly share my view, and I would like to then offer the space to Dr. Ananda and Georgia if they want to comment. If from what I understood from the question, and from my experience, I believe that nature is very gentle, and it has very sophisticated ways if we need them. But I understand that one of the direct ways of opening the learning gates is pretty much be barefoot in nature and have the teaching session there. And it's been scientifically proven, all the incredible benefits that just doing that creates and how much it facilitates learning. So it's not just for the sake of loving nature, but it's actually, we are designed to learn in natural environments. Our biology, it's designed for that. So the more that we attune our pedagogies in Auroville and anywhere to those cycles, so the more enriching the learning experience will be, from my understanding. So I don't know if Dr. Ananda, you want to share something, especially with all the nature-based pedagogy that is actually being experimented.
Can be experimented
in Auroville and from your work.
Well, I don't think we can have anything exclusively based on nature, because nature is part of the whole life of the human being on this earth. So it's not just, if you are just based on nature, then it will be too much partial education. So nature has to be included in the total education of the child. Yeah, but the important thing that you have mentioned, where I can agree, is the child in the beginning days ought to be open to exposed to nature. Because in the beginning, the child is much more open to nature. Because in Sri Aurobindo, the mother, there's one thing that they believe, that what I told you, the instrument, the mind, the vital or the emotions and the body, there is behind this outer structure, there's something called the subtle physical. And it is this subtle mind, subtle emotions, subtle body, which are truly open to nature. So the child, when the outer body, outer mind and life is not that developed and concretized, he is more open on the subtle levels. So the mother would say, take the child into nature. Show the child the butterfly, the lion, the snakes, the worms. He can communicate better with those flowers, not with his mind, not with his heart, not with his body, but the second body, what we call the subtle physical. So at that time, the child should be more and more exposed. And I remember in my days, because I was a student in the ashram also, in our childhood, we were taken a lot into gardens. As children, 10 years, 8 years, 10, 12 years. Ashram has plenty of beautiful flower gardens and forest gardens. So we were taken into the gardens in those times because we could connect as children better and more direct contact. But as you grow up, what happens? The mind gets more concretized, the feeling gets more sterilized, and the body becomes more stiff. So the connection is lost. So what you're saying can be done only when the child is very young, because naturally, automatically, he is open to learning. Later on, as you also mentioned, we have to make a conscious effort. But this effort could be cultivated when one is a child. For example, the English poet, which all of you know, whom all of you know, the Wordsworth, or all the English poets, or many poets in the world, when they see in nature the wayside daffodil, how does it inspire him? It's not just suddenly he saw a daffodil and he gets to write a poem, no. He has been brought up from a childhood somewhere a contact. Whereas many of us, most of us lose this contact, and then we say, oh my God, this poem is beautiful, Savitri is lovely. But Wordsworth had a spontaneity of connection because from his childhood he grew up in nature. So nothing can be based on nature, But an exposure to nature when one is a child could be very, very important part of education. I would say that. Seven.
Yeah, thank you for your question, Thomas.
Sure about how the way of council is ecological
Sorry.
system. Yeah, just want to invite Georgia to share something that she shared with me about the way of council being based also as an ecological system in itself. I feel that's.
Yeah, we have nature of council as well. Way of council. It's Gigi Coyle is the trainer and the founder of this. Well, I feel that with way of council we live what it means ecosystem. So we don't speak about it, but we really live it, how it works. And this is very important because we become nature. We become nature. We are not out in nature, we are nature. I just wanted to share that we have in Greece, with my organization, the people we collaborate, Iliotropio, it's called the organization, we have been offered a piece of land in the city, which is a very beautiful plot with all trees. And we open this gate for whoever wants to come. And we have it open for young ages, for older children, because we feel this has to be part of any educational system. And it's a threshold that we need always to step in when we feel. What I see is that somehow there is, with children, as they grow, and with the system, they get isolated from nature. So there is a challenge and an invitation how we do it, and this has to do with according to every child and the need that each child has. So when we come to teenagers, there is other ways to bring nature and to combine with the curriculum. I feel that when we experience way of council, we experience, and I will complete with this, that we are nature. And this is part of the ecology.
Thank you. And just a final remark. Just want to share like a practical example that I have learned from the Amazon indigenous people on what it means to learn from nature in an evolving sense, because we're talking about how we evolve from the individual sadhana to the collective sadhana. Our invitation is to widen the definition of collective, include other sentient beings into what we understand the collective beyond the humans. That's something that we've been sharing. And something that not everybody knows is that the Amazon jungle that has been viewed as this immense wild place. It is not exactly a wild, and it has not been for thousands of years. The Amazon, it's more closer to a wilderness gardened by humans. A great deal of the Amazon forest has been designed and consciously planted by humans. And the Amazon that naturally has a very poor soil, ironically, the soil of the Amazon is very difficult to seed, fruits or certain kinds of like vegetables. Is because it rains so much, it's very difficult to actually harvest food. So the indigenous communities of the Amazon, listening to the teachings of the forest, they learned how to create what they call the terra preta, which is a black soil created by humans with natural, to this day, we don't know how they did it. But what they eventually created in the Amazon was they converted a poor soil to the most fertile soil has ever been found on the planet. The terra preta is such a mysterious soil that you can take it away, a meter from it, like go away, come back 3 years later, and it has grown. The soil is so alive that it grows in itself. It's a mystery. And what I'm saying is that when we learn to listen to nature, we can collaborate to create something new for the benefit of all sentient beings, because that terra preta eventually made the Amazon the most diverse place on Earth because of humans learning from the mother. So I just want to offer that we have so much potential for learning from all the great teachers we have. Thank you.
Taking a breath in. And as you just breathe out, settling in. Coming into this space. And bringing in the silence and the stillness. And coming into this moment. Okay. So before we go to the last concluding session, we just had session 4, which was the evolution of consciousness through education. And we had a panel discussion where we had 3 different people coming from education and practice in different way, the wisdom of the council, our own integral education, and the environmental education or the retreats with ecology. So they have just been in groups, mining what they listen to, bringing in from their own lived experience, learnings and insights. So I'm going to be inviting the repertoire of each group to briefly share with the larger audience, and we have the next session panelists ready out over here to just share very briefly from the session, as you harvested it, what are some of your key learnings and insight from how, through education, one can really make that effort? And what is it that one thing we will be working towards implementing, not just in our personal lives, but also in our communities, and wherever there has been the possibility of bringing in an Aurovillian context to bring that in. We keep it short and sweet. We, of course, will be exchanging notes later on, but just because we are ready for the next session as well. So I'm going to invite Nilima, Jyoti, and is it Vatsala? No. What's her name? Sundaram. Okay, so the stage is yours. Whoever wants to come in. Just one sec, I need to switch on. Is that on? Video on?
Namaste. So our group harvested the thoughts based on the previous panel discussion I would like to share in brief. So we discussed that we have to witness what is happening without, reacting to it, and just to have the feeling that how to respond to that situation. And, these were not only the discussions, we actually saw it happening within our group. So one of the members shared how he felt about something, during the discussion. And then that discussion, gave us very new insights, which I will share. So acknowledging with the, larger system, the another insight was how, systems are looking at us and how we are looking at systems. So it should have to be like, both ways. How the systems are looking at us, and then what are the intentions they are having. And the another one point was like we need to create new mental health spaces. And like spaces, those spaces can be communities, any religious places, be it a temple, mosque, church, or any new reverence place, or be it a special community where we can say our things, because this modern time is different from the traditional times, when one of the discussions we harvested here, that in the olden days, people used to go to the temples and they used to say all their worries to their respective gods. So in modern times, how do we need to create new mental health spaces where a person can feel safe and can share without fear, and will be felt like that voice has been heard. Then another point by one of the member was like, what are the should and should not that should be worked out? And we have to be very honest and brutal at the same time, that whatever we are expressing, like, are we ready to be honest with ourselves? And this realization, it might take us to the inner child as well. So what are the wounds which are still to be healed? So addressing to those points. And then whatever we are listening, welcoming the process, and it should come from the centeredness of joy, of happiness, the emotional centeredness. So all these things should come from there. One more point was discussed, harvested, like we need compassion in our education system for animals and for plants in modern days. Then we have to think of the ways that how we can bring nature to the classroom. Because in modern days, we see that, plants and nature is absent in the modern classrooms. So we have to look for those processes, how we can bring nature in the classroom. And then experiential learning, and contemplative education has to be part of our education system. The sense of communion and in the community, and it should be based on trust. These elements has to be, included in our pedagogy. And very beautiful, 2 lines, which I will summarize here, like, nature is new temple. This also harvested during our talk. Manojji, came up with this, like, nature is new temple, and learning to, communicate is communion, okay? So, and oneness with nature, how we can inculcate in our education system and in our day-to-day lives, and educating all parts of our being to come, in communion with nature. So this was another insight shared by one of the members, and finding those processes that enables us to be more close to the nature and living more consciously in sync with nature. So these were the insights harvested in our group. Thank you so much.
Namaste. Namaste. I'm from the group where Nilima led the circle, and Dr. Anand Reddy was one of the resource persons. And we had a fantastic discussion, and we started with the same, with the nature. And a lot of the details are there, but you see, the children, when they are at the age where they are more open to the learning from nature, we should expose them, because there is a dynamic of development at different ages, age levels, different faculties develop, and we have to respect the growth of the child at different faculties. Like at the age of 7, there could be some mental faculties, and maybe when the child is 13, 14, their personality is solidified and looking towards the future. So from the nature to the, we have to give the respect to different faculties development and educate them. Development of faculties, and not only studying the subjects, And when we give more emphasis on only on the subject, memorizing and mugging out, that is not the sharpening the faculties. And when the faculties are sharp, they can do anything in the life. Like any knife, if it is sharp, they can cut anything. We got the example from ashram school. Throughout their education, their faculties, they are giving more importance on the faculty development. That's why they can succeed. They can do anything in life, and they are not afraid of. But in the public education, usually it happens that you are asked to do certain subjects and mug up. Then they are afraid if they are not confident to handle other things. So include the connection with nature and learning, but to go beyond. So and when all these things are done, that means it is not exactly done as it is done outside. So you have challenges, the parents, the society, and the demands. So up to age of 6, everything goes fine. Then when the community, the society demands, the children, the parents face problem, and then only way to keep the parents with you and the children with you and carry on your experiment and innovation is to involve parents into your school curriculum. Then they understand exactly what it is being developed and how valuable it is. So Mirambika is one of the examples, and there are some experiments in Odisha, Sri Aurobindo Integral Educations have done, and they are very valuable inspiration for all of us. So awareness of the parents and to do away with the over dependence on schools and unschooling. Fortunately, we had one person who had 2 children. They are unschooling, and a fantastic example. And that could be done, and with confidence. As a movement focused on the ideology and philosophy, okay, support and representation of the administration to cultivate the development of faculties in schooling. So it is not only you believe and the parents, but when you are doing a larger experiment, there are so many schools, then the administration should take the responsibility of securing the children's development and how they face the challenges. For example, there are a few hundred Sri Aurobindo Integral Education Centers in Odisha, and they are trying to implement what the integral education that is envisaged by the mother and Sri Aurobindo. And then we focus more on the faculty development than just the certificate. And then when they go to the society, the certificate is asked. And in Odisha, at a certain point, there was a common examination in class 5 and class 7th. And the administration came and liaisoned with convinced the government, and the officers, they came and visited the schools, and they found, even they gave a blank paper, say, whatever that you want to write, we will sign. And that all the common examinations for Sri Aurobindo Integral Education Centers were exempted. Even just the principal can write this child has passed class 7th, then any school in Odisha, thousands of schools of Odisha, they can accept only if they are from the Sri Aurobindo Integral Centers. So focusing on faculty development is not enough enough, but the securing the child for going into the society, that also to be done, and it's the responsibility of the administration. Like in ashram, if any child going out of their ashram schooling, then they have a certain kind of thing that if ashram writes that this child has completed this course, they can go to this university, that university, that is recognized. That is not only the school can do, it is the administration who has to do it. And if in Auroville we can also develop something so that anything, because here also we give emphasis on faculty development, integral education. We don't have trained teachers. We don't believe in that. We want self-development. All these things are to be recognized in one way or the other, that when the children go out, they are found. Otherwise, people will be going out halfway, how I will be recognized in the out? Then I will go to get some certificate. To do away with the certificates and focus on for development, the administration has a responsibility. And then 2 things are advised. They read the book National System of Education by Sri Aurobindo and National Value of Art by Sri Aurobindo. it is recommended for everybody. Thank you.
The theme today was nature and education. And so the first question we had was, what is nature and how do we connect to it? And one of our members very spontaneously said that it's through breath. When we breathe, we can connect with the whole universe. And the more we can breathe consciously, we don't necessarily need to touch a flower or a leaf or anything, but that is also fine. But if we can focus on our breath, that helps us to connect to the whole universal nature. Then the thing was, how do we link education and nature? So there are two approaches to nature. One is a spiritual approach, where is a deep connection to nature, and the other is a scientific approach, where we want to understand through the mind and analyze and know the patterns. So we feel that when children are left in nature, they connect to both at the same time. They connect to the magic in it, and at the same time they observe patterns. And when they observe patterns, it develops a curiosity, and they can go deeper also on the scientific level of understanding nature. And when both happen at the same time, and when the magic grows into them, they actually can connect to the magician with the M capital. They can connect to the magician through engaging with the magic behind nature, and that which sustains the whole universe, that which is within us, and that which is around us. So this is what we felt. This is our aspiration for the children. However, some of us also acknowledged that in the systems of today, it is not always easy to touch the magic. It's easier to touch the scientific aspect of nature. So the challenge is how to bring both together. Thank you.
Education is quite a wide arena. One is the formal education, the other is the education for life and preparing for life. And I think it's an ongoing process. But thank you for the valuable inputs in terms of where we could make the beginning and how we could really hold space for that. So with that, we end the session 4 of the day. And we now move to the concluding session for the day. And the topic is very interesting. It's a topic which is very alive, and also the reason why the whole conclave or the spiritual summit came together, making of the conscious community. And we have people here on the stage. Dr. Gautam Gosal is a member of the governing board and a research scholar. Dr. David Frawley, also called as Vamadeva Ji, a Vedic scholar, but also member of the International Advisory Council. Arvindan Ji, who is, again, a scholar, a writer, author, very deeply immersed in literature. And then we have Shurjo from Ananda, India. And they have been part of conscious communities, and we've heard Shurjo already on day 1 of how they have been creating this community. So the discussion and the deliberation more is in terms of what goes into making of it, what needs to happen for sustaining of it. So I'm going to hand over to Shurjo, who's going to be leading this discussion. And we might at some point in time allow for interaction, some question and answers. But in this moment is, again, to hold the space of listening, holding the context that what is alive in me in my individual sadhana and in being part of a conscious spiritual community or even a community wherever I am, what in their sharing of a lived experience of wisdom is something that I can hold on to, is something that I can seed and I can sustain. Thank you so much. Over to you.
Thank you, Sudha. Lovely to be here with the three of you, and lovely to be here with all of you. The great masters of our modern day and age have all spoken of the need for intentional, conscious communities as the model for how society is going to organize itself. But they're not creating something new. They're not saying this out of thin air that now communities is going to be the way forward. They are drawing from ancient wisdom. Sri Aurobindo ji himself, a master in the Vedas, is drawing the model for these conscious communities from Vedic communities that have always existed. And so I thought it would be lovely to pick this topic up from that particular point of reference, because we have amongst us great Vedic scholars, especially Vamadev-ji, who I'd like to begin this conversation with. How would you describe a Vedic community? Give us an image, a visual understanding, and where perhaps that model might then inspire conscious communities today.
Yes, I'm very happy to be with you. Is this up? Is this up?
Why don't we switch?
Okay. Okay. Hari Om Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha. So I'm very happy to be with you, and I can see you are already forming these communities, so I can look into your eyes, and I'm very happy with the question and the discussion. What is the conscious community? It's the entire universe. The entire universe is by nature a conscious community. Sometimes we as human beings, in the arrogance of our own minds, exclude us from that. And we look at the community, we objectify the community of nature. We don't see them as conscious beings. We see them as objects to be measured, to be controlled, to be exploited, to be used for our personal and human benefit. So what I want to go to start off with is what sometimes people call the caste system, which is perhaps the most misunderstood aspect of community and society in India and perhaps the world. So let us go back to the Purusha Sukta, where this is supposedly taught. What does it say? Purusha Vedam Sarvam. Purusha, the conscious being, is everything. And the human being is a manifestation of the cosmic being or the universal being. For the universal being, sun is the eye, moon is the mind, vayu is the prana, all of that. So then we have, of course, the Upanishadic teaching, Sarvam Kalvedvam Brahman. Brahman is Satchit Ananda, is everything. And then we have this whole idea of Paramatma. There is only one self in all beings. Aham Brahm Asmi. So in other words, the whole Vedic tradition is based upon a unity of consciousness, being, and Ananda, which is universal and eternal, but which manifests at different levels, and which we human beings should be one level of manifestation. Even if we study Ayurveda, of course, we look at the 5 elements, the Jataragni, the Vayus, nature is within us. But we as human beings are what Sri Aurobindo called a mentalized material being. So in other words, I also just like to say, we as human beings, as mental beings, are embodied consciousness. But true consciousness, what we call chit, not chitta, is unembodied. It is like light and space. It is a universal principle and presence. So the movement of yoga is always from the embodied consciousness to the non-embodied consciousness, and also from the embodied prana. We have an embodied prana in the body. We're born, we undergo various processes, growth, etc. Eventually we pass away, but everything in the universe is alive. Prana is also non-embodied. The universe itself is the non-embodied prana. Every force in the universe, whether lightning, magnetism, or whether these, what they're inventing now with all their quarks and quasars and different things, are all aspects of prana, and they're all pervaded with consciousness. So there is a unity of being. Now, on that basis, where does this caste or thing come from? And it's simply a diversity of function. So we use the human body as a model for society, which is an organic model. So we have functions of hands and feet and eyes and ears. You don't walk on your head because that's not how it's organically set up. There's a common body and being to the feet and the head, but there's a difference of function. So in the Vedic idea of community, we honor unity of being, but we also acknowledge difference of function, which can be based upon particularly the gunas, but karma and other factors, and an evolution that is going on in that particular process. So in that regard, we need a differentiation of function. You cannot do all the things. You can't be cleaning your house, driving the car, driving the airplane, being your own doctor. Differentiation of function is necessary. Now, what is called caste in the Western world was something very different. It actually started mainly in Mexico. They had 18 different castes based upon how much Native American blood you had versus the Spanish blood. And the ones at the top, were the ones that were pure Spanish, and then as you went down, you lost certain rights, and you did not have equality at the level of being. You had a differentiation of function. In that regard, we all have the same organs, and to some extent, we all perform the same functions in life, where we have service functions, we have business functions, we have educational functions, spiritual functions, and so forth to some degree. But there are different people who have these to different degrees. And in society, a specialization of function is necessary. Someone is trained as a doctor, someone is trained as a teacher. We cannot just simply give these functions to whoever wants it at any different time. So that is the first point. The second point is, what are the goals of activity as a human society? For example, in the United States, the goal of activity is commercial. In fact, the American, I think it's the Declaration of Independence, says you're granted life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. There's a problem with that, because the pursuit of happiness is the running after desire, and whatever you run after runs away from you. So it's not just a question of an outer freedom, but an inner freedom. So we have the four purusharthas. No? So we have to have our dharma. We have to understand, by dharma, we have to understand our gunas and our karmas, so know what we are truly capable of. And so out of that basis, dharma, artha, kama, moksha. But the moksha is the liberation from the mind into the pure consciousness and unity with all. Because in our ordinary behavior, we do have to become caught up in the different things we have to do. Mother has to be a mother, father has to be a father, and so forth. Different functions are allowed and necessary, and different propensities exist. Someone may be born with the karma of an artist. We can't tell them they have to do something else. In our modern society today, we go after jobs that get paid well, because that's the easiest way to survive, but it doesn't always deal with our human potential. So the unity of consciousness causes us to pursue moksha, which is not running away from anything. Moksha is when we have the freedom from limitations, desire, or even objectivity, in the sense that everything is conscious. It's not just that we as human beings are conscious, and the object we measure, we own, and we possess. You were talking about nature. Nature is full of consciousness. Nature is a manifestation of the Chit Shakti, the power of consciousness, and it is not something that can be compared to or identified to a person. You can't say that a rock is inferior to a human being because it doesn't move, it doesn't speak, it doesn't breathe. It has a different functions in the universe. For example, rocks make much better murtis than human beings do. And the reason is because they're living in geological time, which is millions of years. They can hold the forces of eternity, which we as human beings cannot. Then, in nature, all these factors are giving us prana. The flowers, the plants, the air, the waters. And what's happening today? We're out in an urban environment in which there's no prana. And we're trying to educate children in prana-less environments, and so the mind cannot function as well. And I would also, in this context, like to say that we are actually, as a species, losing our sensory acuity today because of our technology. We're used to things that move very fast, that are very, very bright or very loud, so we cannot see the nuances in nature, and we want everything black and white, right or wrong, this group or that group. We're caught in dichotomy. And this is just a simple exercise I want to recommend for you. One of the things we always also talk about in Ayurveda is you get prana from your sensory impressions. So I often tell students what junk food does to the body, a junk impression does to the mind. If you're looking at a box all day long, a screen, your mind becomes a box and a screen. So we recommend that you restore your depth perception every day, morning and evening. We like to go out and look at the stars in the sky, or whatever in the morning, whatever you need to do. Then you move into these deeper things, because most of what we call knowledge is I would say, time, location. These are coordinates of the mind. They are not in the object. They are ways that we are measuring the object. In fact, we're experiencing everything as one whole. We're not experiencing different dimensions differently. So that wholeness is the consciousness. And the conscious community is a community of seeing, observing, and discerning, not passing judgment, letting things be what they are. And this you should remember, whatever you're looking at with the eyes of your mind is looking back at you with the eyes of the universal consciousness. You are always seeing yourself. And even space is a mirror of consciousness in which the consciousness is being reflected upon you. So these ancient Vedic communities were based upon that harmony, not with nature as an outer form, but with that consciousness, and that's also then becomes the basis of the medicine, the yoga, even the pranayama, the pratyahara, all these factors involved. And intentional communities. What is your intention? What is your sankalpa? Is your intention to make a lot of money, to have so many people stay here, to do this or to do that? The true intentional community is to promote the moksha and promote that deeper consciousness and all, promote the sadhana. So these are a few ideas of the Vedic community, and we can certainly integrate them in our modern society today, and we certainly need them to be in harmony with the conscious, self-aware universe. Hari Om.
Thank you very much. Aravindanji, what would you say would be a way for us to integrate these seemingly very high, somewhat abstract understandings, harder for, I would say, most people to live on a day-to-day basis? So they need certain organizing of these ideals into a way that people can begin to organize themselves, as Vamadevaji was saying, based perhaps on the state of the vibrational consciousness that is now being called a caste. But how would such a conscious community come together in your mind?
Okay. I will start with a small story that I studied when I was a small child. It was a Russian folk story. There was this king who was sleeping and he was having continuous nightmares. It was a very cruel looking very dangerous, carnivorous animal, almost like a dragon, was hanging upside down right over his head. Every night he would have this dream and he would wake up screaming. Then he decided that he should find some wise person who could give the meaning of this nightmare. So he made the announcement and everything, but nobody came forward. And there was a peasant in distant lands, and he was in need of money. And one day he was telling, as he was walking through the forest, he was telling, oh, if only I know the meaning of this dream, I would be able to get all those rubles that the king had promised. And then a snake appeared before him. And it was a talking snake, of course. And it told him, I will give you the real meaning and the solution for this particular nightmare of the king. But you should give me quarter of whatever the king gives you. So the peasant agreed to that. And the snake told him the meaning of that nightmare. The peasant went to the king and told, see, your land right now is filled with violent people who want to kill each other. There are a lot of criminal activities going on around you. And that is the meaning of this particular nightmare. You have to identify this violent people, criminal mindset, and you have to eradicate the criminals as well as the criminal mindset that is prevalent in the nation. The king was very happy. It made sense. He gifted a lot of some 1,000 rubles to the peasant. The peasant was going back and he saw the snake coming. He took his dagger. He just threw it over the snake. He didn't want to part the gift with the snake. And the dagger just went and cut the tip of the snake. The snake went away. And this guy took all the money and he went and he lived happily. Then the king again started having nightmares. This time it was a very mean-looking fox that was hanging upside down over his head. And the king repeatedly had this nightmare. Again, now this time he didn't make any announcement. He called for the peasant. Now the peasant was very much upset. He came through the same path and he just told out loud that this time whatever I get, I will give you. Please come in front of me. And the snake came. And he said, this time you have to give me half of whatever the king gives. And then the snake told him what the meaning of this particular dream was. So he went back to the king. He told, you are surrounded by cunning people, people who always cheat others. And you have to be very careful and you have to take care of these people. You have to eradicate this cunning mindset that is prevalent in your country. The king was very happy. He again presented a lot of things. This time, what the peasant did was, he didn't go through that particular path. He chose another path and he went through that path and he cheated the snake. Third time, the king was having, this time not nightmare, a pleasant dream. A very calm looking, beautiful lamb was hanging upside down. Again he called the peasant. This time again the peasant went and he called the snake in the forest. And the snake came and it told him, okay, don't worry about all the things that you cheated me, you tried to kill me and all that. I will tell you the meaning. You go tell. Whatever happens, let it happen. So this time he went and told, now your people all have become very sattvic, very peace-loving, truth-abiding people. You don't have any problem in your country. And then the king gifted him with a lot of money. This time he came back to the snake. He offered everything to the snake. And the snake told, don't worry, it was not your fault. It was the fault of the times. The first time there was violence and you also behaved in a very violent manner. Second time there was cunning around you and you behaved in a very cunning manner. This time there is a lot of peace and truthfulness and trustworthiness around you and you are behaving the same way. So the point here is the times around us, the Zeitgeist, the time spirit, in many ways it shapes us. So the person, in terms of evolution, is bound by the time spirit. So what was the non-changing constant in the story? It was the snake. Snake as the symbol of wisdom. So if we can make ourselves, anchor ourselves to this wisdom that does not change its behavior, with respect to the changing times. Swami Ranganathan Maharaj of Ramakrishna Mission used to say that eternal values for a changing society. If we can anchor ourselves to these eternal values, then we will be able to make this conscious evolution wherever we are. But at the same time, in this land, India, we have made a great experiment in which we wanted to change the entire land, every occupation, into a field for conscious evolution of every human being. That is why Dr. David Frawley, Sri Vamadeva Sastri, he made a very important point that about Purusha Sukta. And where it happens is in the context of yajna. If you go through the actual archaeological papers that are published according to, because now I am going to talk about the history of this particular thing that you asked me about. If you go through the archaeological papers regarding Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, most of us concentrate on the Aryan invasion aspect of it, whether the Aryans invaded or not. There is another deeper aspect to it, which almost all archaeologists identify, but it never comes out in the textbooks, but it is very important. It is, what was the social structure that held together this very loose, federation-like, vast Bronze Age empire? If you take Egypt, you have imposing pyramids, which means there is a very strong concentration of political power, a big empire. Whereas if you go to Harappa Mohenjo-daro, the Sindhu Saraswati civilization, the defining feature of this particular civilization is that you don't have such imposing royal structures. What you have are essentially democratic structures. At the same time, there is very clear segregation of populations, like this segregation based on their occupations. Jonathan Mark Canoyer, who was almost an authority on Harappan archaeology in the other side of the border, he particularly points this out, and he says that when you look at the archaeological correlates for a Varna-like system, you find that in Harappa and Mohenjo-daro. And he also says that you have something like the Jagmani system. That's a very interesting thing. Now, you know that Jagmani itself is derived from Yajaman, which means Yajna, which comes from Yajna. This Jagmani system was given as a sociological framework for Indian societies by a Christian missionary. His name was Dr. Weiser. He was working in North India in some village. And he told that this is the basis of Indian village life. And this Indian village life is actually, this Jagmani system itself was something where the workers become serf-like and they are attached to that particular village, etc., etc. But interestingly, I think it was published in 1936, and even today it is considered as the classic. If you go to the sociology curriculum in India, you will find mostly when you talk about Jagmani system, it is this textbook that forms the basis. Interestingly, some 4 years before the publication of this, with live examples, Mahatma Gandhi, writing from Yerwada prison, says that a tailor, a carpenter in a village, they work with the spirit of yajna, and that forms the basis of Indian village life. So what I want to stress again is that this particular system has been tried throughout India, and that is why from every section of the society we were having saints and enlightened people, because the spirit of yajna was there. Now, in Auroville, what we are doing is that Sri Aurobindo wanted to do it in a very conscious way, adapted to the new environment that the science and the modern connectivity the entire globe has been bringing. In other words, he wanted to take the essence of Indian wisdom and make it into a field in which all people from all over the nation can come and they can do sadhana in the spirit of yajna, and they can flower into better human beings, or they can flower into their own, what he actually calls integral self-transcendence. And for that he tells 3 aspects. One is that we will be having love, we will be having knowledge, we will be having power. Love without knowledge and power is not only useless, it is also dangerous. So he says that love should be tranquilized by, these are the words of Sri Aurobindo, love should be tranquilized by knowledge into a calm ecstasy, and it will gain strength. It will vibrate with strength. And the hands of the power should have strong hands illuminated by the brain. And the brain should actually also illuminate the obscure corners and inspirations of the heart. And all these, and then this is the very important word that he uses, all these gods should gather in the sacrifice of the soul in obedience to the greater will, and then there will happen the integral self-transcendence. So this is the basis of yajna. And that is what we are actually trying here. The entire Indian wisdom spread over the villages through millennia, it has been taken, condensed, and made into a field, and we are doing that experiment here. And it is more than an experiment, we are creating something new here. And it will have its own obstacles and others, but this is the process through which it is.
Dr. Gautam, do you have any thoughts on the same subject?
Thank you very much. And I'm thankful to the audience also. Somebody was complaining why the audience is so small, but I find the audience is very big because this is an audience which has consciousness, and a crowd is not an ideal thing to speak to. So I'm very happy to be here and to speak on, I will speak relevantly, and my wife always advises me that the text is the surest guide. And he calls me Gigi. She calls me Gigi because she is my student. Gigi, text is the surest guide. Don't go away from the text. So I focus on a chapter from the human cycle. It is entitled The Ideal Law of Social Development. There you have the clue to Sri Aurobindo's idea of enlargement of a true community through the proper balance of individual and society. I think a chapter which critiques Karl Marx, and I'm coming through the West, not through the East, like my previous speakers. It critiques both Marx and it critiques Bertrand Russell. But as my mentor and my patron, Anandada, is here, he has taught me a lot of things. And he will be knowing very well that Sri Aurobindo does not reject Marx. Anandada used to say when in our conferences which we did together, Sri Aurobindo did not reject anybody. Sri Aurobindo did not reject Bertrand Russell even, with whom he quarreled through a letter. And he was not happy. He said, I haven't forgotten Russell, but for want of time, I didn't give time to him. He was not happy with Russell's remarks on him. But in this chapter, The Ideal Law of Social Development, Sri Aurobindo beautifully sums up the interaction between the individual and the collective, and which will lead to a proper humanity, a true consciousness which will rule the earth consciousness. Am I audible?
Yes.
So he says that the individual, Russell says in his essay, the role of individuality, he gives extreme importance to individuality. Bertrand Russell, he has a famous essay, The Role of Individuality. He says, he gives extreme importance to individuality. And you know, Marx has given very slight importance to the individuals. And the individual is being slaughtered at the altar of the state. Sri Aurobindo does not reject Marx or Russell altogether. He just harmonizes them in that essay. It's very significant, and it will be very relevant for all the Aurovillians to read the chapter. He says, the individual should be given utmost freedom to grow, to enlarge, to fulfill, to be creative, and to contribute. And in another chapter in the Ideal of Human Unity, Sri Aurobindo says, the individual is the conscious progressive. That is very interesting. It's an aphorism. The individual is the conscious progressive. And because every new idea is being brought by the individuals, the collective never gives you original ideas. It is the individual. So we cannot ignore the individuals, which Marx wanted to do. At the same time, Sri Aurobindo uses a very interesting sentence, which I don't remember, but he says, the individual should be aided by society, and society should be aided by the individual. So there will be, everybody is supporting everybody. Like in the meditation room in Shantiniketan, there's a guy from Kerala who comes sometimes from time to time. Whenever he comes, the entire room becomes quiet. Such is his consciousness that it helps everybody around. That is the value of Sri Aurobindo's idea of collective meditation, that everybody is helping everybody. And that implies the abolition of the ego, the abdication of the ego, which is the key point in every spirituality, in every spiritual thought. Now, I will refer to two poems by Sri Aurobindo before ending. After that, I will take questions, no problem. Now, Sri Aurobindo wrote two poems in new meters. One is entitled Into the Silence, and the other is Beyond the Silence. So in Into the Silence, he's now moksha and nirvana are not Sri Aurobindo's ways. I'm sorry to say this. Neither moksha nor nirvana, Sri Aurobindo goes beyond them. And he suggested in a letter that even the Buddha knew it, that nirvana is not the end point. So Into the Silence, let me quote some lines. Into the silence, arise, O spirit immortal. Into the silence, arise, O spirit immortal. Away from the turning wheel, breaking the magical circle, ascend single and deathless. Pass from the sphere of the grey and the little, leaving the cry and the struggle into the silence forever. This is nirvana. And in the very next poem, Sri Aurobindo comes back from nirvana and he says, rise with the world in thy bosom. Now I noted it. How Professor Gokak once said in Sri Aurobindo's poetry, doctrine incarnates as imagination. Now see how doctrine incarnates as imagination. Rise with the earth, not the world. Rise with the earth in thy bosom. Means don't reject the earth. That is all important. And then there is another significant line in the poem, Beyond the Silence. Act in the world with the spirit beyond it. Now, these two will totally illustrate Sri Aurobindo's philosophy, his yoga, his integrality, and how he developed the theory of the individual and the collective so masterfully in all his works. Thank you.
Thank you all three. We've heard beautifully wonderful philosophies, potentials for us all to hold. Now comes the big question. Boots on the ground. Who makes these things happen? We've got an awareness of the unity of all consciousness. We've got the division based on the varnas. We've got the balance between individual and collective. How and who will bring this into being?
I think you should answer the question. You haven't answered the question.
Because we are working on the same area.
Very much working on the same area, but unlike Auroville in a certain way, of course, in our communities, we are all disciples of Paramahansa Yogananda. We're all practitioners of Kriya Yoga, which then makes the intention of our community very much moksha. And then in the desire to live by the intention of moksha, the question begs, how do I raise my children with that intention? How do I practice my business with that intention? How do I have a fruitful relationship with that intention? And so there's a very clear guideline. And then from there, of course, everything begins to, you have to keep coming back to, okay, if my intention is moksha, what would a relationship look like? Can I get too entangled?
Ananda has a question, and I think not a question.
He has an answer to the question, which is going to be a lovely thing. Can we bring Ananda to answer this question for us? How lovely.
Well, I don't have a question. I would like to add something to the panel of discussion that you have had. You see, this long back, when the ashram school was inaugurated, the mother gave us a message that Sri Aurobindo thought of an international university to spread the message and consciousness of the supermind. And the mother also used to tell us that why do you have to develop and perfect your being, especially your physical? Because it must be ready to receive the new consciousness. This is of great importance because we are not here to prepare our lives for moksha or nirvana or for anything. And not even any yogic or Vedic consciousness. It's very specific that we are here to open ourselves to the supramental consciousness. And I think that should be important because the mother herself read out this message. Now, when we say opening ourselves to the new consciousness, what is the crux of the message? In our educational system, as all of you know, we have been discussing for the past 3 hours, that the essential message of Sri Aurobindo is to open up our soul, our psychic being, to the new consciousness. That means to awaken the soul. Now, why did they emphasize so much on the awakening of the psychic being? This is important again to see that what is the time that he's speaking of, as somebody rightly mentioned. You see, over the centuries, Sri Aurobindo has noted that society has gone through several stages. What he called the symbolic, the typal, the conventional, the individual, the subjective. And this is the time I feel Sri Aurobindo and the mother have inaugurated the subjective age with their emphasis on the opening of the psychic being. Because the psychic being is the true subject. And that is the importance. Because once they start this new venture, it will go on. Because Sri Aurobindo's main philosophy is that of evolution. And the main principle of evolution is from the intensive to the extensive, from the individual to the collective. And here is one individual called Sri Aurobindo and the mother who have put the seed of the psychic education. Before that, there are a lot of other experiments. But this seed of psychic education is now beginning to open up, what we say extensive. And in this extension of the seed idea, Auroville has a great role to play. You see, this is where I see the educational system Because long back I had told you already that I had written to the mother if Auroville education should imitate that of the ashram. She said no. Obviously because of this. That is, Auroville has to be the field for expanding and extending this idea into the world. And that is why Auroville has to have its own way of extension of the seed idea. And that is where I see Sri Aurobindo and the mother inaugurating the subjective age. And it is this consciousness, what we have been calling about the intensive conscious community. That's where the mother has started the Sri Aurobindo Ashram School, Sri Aurobindo Ashram, and now the extension has come to Auroville. So there is an extension of the ashram, is Auroville. It's the same principle, that extending the philosophy of the subjective age. So I look at the whole problem of intentional community, education that we were discussing in the afternoon, and also Sri Aurobindo's ideology, what my friend again told us about the individual and the collective. This is the meaning, intensive to extensive, that is the rhythm of evolution. Be it the supreme Brahman, the single oneness, which has become the multiplicity. Be it the Vedic rishis, the single Vedic rishis, who have become the multiple consciousness now. And be it the same individual, you call it the Marx, what has happened. Everywhere the same principle. So Auroville has a great challenge of extending this philosophy, this consciousness of Sri Aurobindo and the mother. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. I come back to our question though, if that is, are we still continuing? Good, wonderful. Just because the two of you are on the governing board here, Vamadevaji, you of course advise as and when it's needed. How does one ensure that the original ideal continues? How does one guide? Because a conscious community needs consciously to keep returning back to this is the intention, as you said, what is the intention in the first place? How would you feel that such a process might take place?
For me?
Either of you, whoever feels inspired.
Hello. So, the point is, as Anandoda has suggested, that the first thing in this yoga is the opening of the psychic being. And unless the psychic being opens, as Sri Aurobindo suggests in a chapter in the Synthesis of Yoga, when the psychic being opens, it starts pushing you towards the supermind. Specifically, he says, when it opens, without the opening of the psychic being, there cannot be a beginning of this widening. And there are three things happening simultaneously in Sri Aurobindo's yoga. A deepening of consciousness, a widening of consciousness, and a heightening of consciousness. And without the opening of the psychic being, that cannot be possible. So the individuals have a great responsibility initially. And so I am very happy that in ones and twos, people are coming and trying to assist us, trying to help in the growth of Auroville, because the individuals coming in ones and twos with an awakened psychic being, only they can enlarge the consciousness of the collective consciousness of Auroville. And I'm very happy that I've got a very good audience here. I'm not at all complaining about the audience. I don't want a crowd. And my friend will continue.
So essentially it is about making sure that things progress. And we are thankful that we have been made the instruments of the transcendental force of Sri Aurobindo and Mother. And we are helping our best to see this particular dream happening. And when I look at the forces around those who are opposing, let us say, I always remember, because when I see them, that is why I told that story. There is a lot of workish time gaze around, and these people are yielding themselves to those workish time forces. Whereas those who are anchored to the truth, they stand against that strong forces of temptation, which give us very beautiful, attractive slogans and make us feel happy that we are rebels. And they are standing with the truth. And it is a great opportunity that has been given to us for us to work in this particular environment to help the people who are standing with the truth. And it is very tough to stand with the truth. Once everything has happened, when the temple is built, everybody will be there. But when actually there is a movement for the temple, only those who are really brave will be there in that movement. The same thing goes here also. Right now, we are in the movement to build the basis. We are going to build what I told yesterday, it was the Schrodinger's dome we are going to build. And inside, you are going to have all possibilities. That is what we are trying to do. We are trying to make sure that this is pregnant with a lot of Gnostic possibilities for evolution. And in that, we have been chosen and we feel very good about it.
Vamadevji, one ideal you would say, this is a must for any conscious community?
Well, I think we have to go back to the Vedic idea of yajna. Everything should be an offering. You know, we have a society based upon property, ownership, naming, objectifying. But when life is a yajna, yoga is the antar-yaga, the inner sacrifice. You sacrifice your prana, your senses, your mind, and so forth. If we're all offering, then there's the abundance for all. If we're all taking, then we end up all being fighting. And yajna, even karma yoga. Karma yoga means doing your best for the benefit of all. It doesn't mean not being concerned about the result of actions. You want the best to occur, but for the benefit of all. Even Gayatri mantra, you're calling down the highest solar transformative light. And a society based upon duty in the positive sense that we have an obligation, rinas, to all living beings, to take care of our families, to take care of the society, to make the world a better place. So this is opposite the values that we've created in the Western world, which is accumulation, ownership, conquest, and all of that. So we need to bring that yajna value back into what we do. And yajna also always brings jnana. It also brings wisdom, and it raises the consciousness beyond the calculating mind. We're not calculating, measuring, and owning. We are sharing an inspiration. And yajna is also a sankalpa, which is to reach the totality, the all, the infinite. You can give it different names. You can have different aspirations for it. But it is that sense of totality in which there is perfection, transformation, and creativity, and a boundless overflowing of Satchidananda.
That's a very beautiful one ideal. If we come together and we want to give and we want to offer, then jnana comes naturally. Everything starts to organize itself naturally. Nobody has to impose an expression on us because everybody holds in their heart a desire to offer. I think that's probably the highest point for us to be picking it up practically on a day-to-day level. So thank you for that.
That is the way to the abdication of the ego.
So you want to speak that into the mic? Too many mics.
Hello. And that is as Dr. Frawley has said, it's a beautiful summing up. In fact, I was listening to him. Karma as a sacrifice. And then slowly, this is the only way to the abdication of the ego. And in between, there is one thing that will come. It may come, it may not come, but usually it comes. That is suffering, which is the enlargement of the soul. Because unless you broaden by suffering, the soma cannot come, the jar is, the mouth of the jar is very narrow, it will break. So the jar must expand through suffering, and then the soma can come into it. So that is just a simple reference from the Veda, and I was really impressed by the conclusion by Dr. Frolle. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sudha, where are we now?
We are now in summation of the session, because I think we never really will know what goes into the making of a conscious community. But what I'm hearing is organizing ourselves around the core. And what is that core that is alive? And how do we keep that alive? How do we organize ourselves around that so that becomes our guiding spirit? Each community will define what for them is their definition to live, whether it is in the community that you and Auroville has a special purpose, a special context, and a role to play. And I'm sure this field that's been created today, we've already began our journey. We are on the journey. And I can never say that our journey is going to finish in the here and the now. But to make a conscious effort that for the future, we take the steps in that intended direction. And what that may be, what would that look like, feel like, is us, right? And how do we organize ourselves in a very conscious manner, in a manner that our heart is open and transparent to receiving and giving, and doing the karma in the way that is, Davidji mentioned. I mean, that's the best that I can summarize in my little way. I cannot summarize in the eloquent way that the others have. But thank you so much. We continue this discussion tomorrow from the perspective of the youth and some of the initiatives, because one of the things that constantly came today was, how do we include the youth? Because they are the ones who will work for the collective future. And tomorrow we will have some interesting perspectives. We have quite a few youth who have been working across different organizations and being part of communities and consciously working on some of the themes and concerns that is alive out here. And some of the initiatives that Auroville has taken towards keeping this conscious community alive as a process, sharing that with all of us in a way that these are experiments in the hope that we become what we were intended for and what has called us for here. So I'm sorry, I would have to conclude here because we do have other plans. So thank you so much. My invitation is to let's take a moment of concentrated silence. And allow for all that has been discussed and shared to be really assimilated in whatever way it is meant. To holding the space for it. And as Davidji mentioned, to make a sankalpa. My invitation is from the deepest space of your heart that's pure, that's the psychic being, the soul that's open to the wisdom. In this sacred space and the fire that has brought us together, offer it. And renewing our will with full surrender to be instruments of a divine will, the willing servitors of the divine consciousness. A sankalpa that while we do the inner work, we hold the space for a collective. Where differences are welcomed with a sense of unity and harmony. And to see the beauty in it. And may we grow in this journey as one. Knowing that all is welcome. And that we are supported, we are held. Hari Om. Thank you so much to each one of you for having brought the richness